The dentist is clocking out after an especially long day. A root canal, a wisdom tooth extraction, too many cavities to count, when her cell phone rings. She answers and is surprised to hear the panicked voice of her wife on the other line. Her heart stops for a moment as she imagines the worst, a car accident, a house fire. But after listening for a moment, she's able to gather enough context to relax. Their son lost his first tooth today. There was a bit of blood on his face, which had sent her wife into a bit of a state. But now, as they both realize it was nothing more than a standard rite of passage, the moment of terror is over. When the dentist arrives home, she finds her wife and son sitting at the kitchen table with dinner ready, and her wife is in the middle of a story. She's telling their son, who listens wide-eyed and rapt, all about the magical creature known as the Tooth Fairy. Later that night, after they've read the boy a story and put him to bed, the two mothers remind him to put his freshly lost tooth under his pillow. When he wakes up, they promise the Tooth Fairy will have left him a surprise. They wait for him to fall asleep, and then, when they hear his gentle snoring, it's time for the swap. The mother who works with teeth all day opts to do the honors. It only seems fair. She sneaks into the room, careful not to wake the boy, and lifts the edge of his pillow. Hang on. What happened to the tooth? She can't see it anywhere. She lifts the pillow just a bit more, but she can't find it. What she sees instead is a fluttering motion as something small and winged darts out from underneath the pillow. She covers her mouth to stifle a startled scream. It's just a moth, she realizes, as the little winged shape darts around the darkened room. Nothing to worry about. The tooth probably got lost in the sheets. Nothing to worry about. She slips a quarter under the pillow and sneaks back out of the room. She doesn't stay long enough to see the little winged creature, the thing she thinks is a moth, fly toward her son's face, landing in his open mouth. The next morning, the boy is delighted to find a shiny quarter under his pillow. He is less delighted to find that he has come down with a sudden case of the sniffles and sneezes. As the dentist heads off for another day of work, her wife calls out from her own job, opting to keep the boy home from school today, just in case. Meanwhile, the dentist is hard at work once more. Today is a bit less stressful than yesterday, but not by a wide margin. Her first patient of the day refuses to sit still while she checks for cavities, nearly kicking her in the process. After they leave, she takes a moment in the back with a cup of coffee, centering herself. When she walks back into the waiting room, she sees her wife sitting there with their son. What are they doing here? She asks her wife, and sees tears in her eyes as she struggles to answer. She turns to their son and asks him what's wrong. He doesn't say a word. Instead, he just opens his mouth. The tooth he lost the day before has grown back. But that's not all. His mouth is full of teeth. And that is not hyperbole. There are teeth all across the roof of his mouth, the insides of his cheeks, covering his tongue. The dentist suspects that if she shone a light down his throat, she would see teeth all the way down. She'd better call in a specialist, because this is no job for an ordinary dental practitioner. It isn't her fault. She could never have been prepared for her son to come down with a case of SCP-478. SCP-478 is a species of small entities of varying size and shape, which resemble a darkly colored butterfly or moth when in flight. Though they have been encountered in the wild frequently, they are elusive and difficult to capture. Instances of SCP-478 that have been contained do not appear to have a need for food, sleep, air, or reproduction. There is still little known about the nature and motives of SCP-478, but this much is clear. They are predatory in nature and tend to target humans under the age of 25, especially those who have not yet lost all of their deciduous teeth. When an instance of SCP-478 finds its prey, it will enter the victim's mouth while they sleep and attach itself to the soft palate in the upper nasal cavity, blocking one of the nostrils. After the creature has embedded there, the victim's body will begin to produce an excess of mucus. With the stuffy nose and increased mucus production, the victim will wake to believe they have come down with a cold. A bit of an annoyance, sure, but nothing some rest, lots of fluids, and a bit of grandma's chicken soup recipe can't cure. That would be true if it were, in fact, a cold. But as the condition progresses, the victim soon realizes that they have come down with more than a case of the sniffles. Soon after waking up, the victim's palate will begin to generate teeth at a rate far faster than ordinary tooth growth. The more teeth grow in, the faster they grow, and the more quickly they spread. These teeth will continue to sprout from the palate, more and more teeth emerging through the skin, until the entire palate has been covered. But it doesn't stop there. Oh no. It continues down the victim's throat and into the esophagus. Over the next several days, usually between 2 and 4, the growth of teeth will continue down into the stomach lining, filling the stomach. Then, teeth will begin to grow in the lungs, making it difficult to breathe, then will grow from the subcutaneous layer of skin. The law of conservation of matter comes into play as these teeth sprout. The calcium required to produce them can't just come from thin air. It must come from somewhere in the body. In this case, that would be the skeleton. Skeletal calcium is leached away to provide new teeth with the material they require. As you might imagine, this process is extremely painful and downright unpleasant in every way. Now, there's no polite way to put this. The ultimate stage of the infestation involves teeth growing downward through the digestive tract. The growth stops once the entire digestive tract has been filled with teeth. Then, the SCP-478 instance will fly out through the victim's mouth, leaving the tooth-filled victim behind. These teeth are, aside from their placement, ordinary. They contain a root, nerve, enamel, just like any tooth you might find in a mouth. You know, where teeth are ordinarily found. The parts of the body where the teeth have formed may expose them to unusual conditions, such as the high concentration of acid in the stomach. Teeth that form within the skin, on the other hand, group together and form large, hard masses of dental material beneath the surface of the skin. The method by which SCP-478 induces this heightened growth of dental tissue is currently a mystery. At first, Foundation research into the nature of the anomalous beings resulted in few leads. But then, one potential lead emerged in an unlikely place. In order to understand the nature of this lead, then I must first take us back in time to the year 1956. Dr. Razman Yelkov was issued a task by his comrade, Dr. Grigory. Grigory asked Yelkov to develop a method that would allow him to produce perfect specimens of human teeth, new, authentic specimens not taken from a cadaver or made from an alternative material. It seemed like an impossible task, until a fellow doctor told him stories of an unnamed man who had found something impossible. Tooth fairies. Dr. Yelkov's colleague brought him to the man with no name, who told him all about these fairies. While traveling during the war in search of remedies, the man said that he met and captured a fairy called Isabella. This Isabella taught the unnamed doctor the fairy language and appointed herself his assistant. From there, Isabella taught the unnamed doctor about the methodology of the fairies, how they could draw enamel from human bones, and how they used that enamel as a source of nutrients to sustain themselves. Naturally, Dr. Yelkov had his doubts about the strange man's claims. He asked for proof, as any of us might in the face of fairy tales, and the doctor with no name was happy to provide it. He took Dr. Yelkov to his workshop, and upon stepping through the door, the doctor was met with a sight of at least 50 fairies fluttering around the room, their dark, iridescent wings beating as they flitted to and fro. This was it, the secret key he had been looking for, the way to unlock the seemingly impossible task he had been issued. The man offered Dr. Yelkov a room for the night, and he accepted, with the intent of learning more about the secrets of the fairies in the morning. But the events of the evening did not go according to plan. When Dr. Yelkov offered to purchase some of the fairies from the man in order to use them for his own research, the offer was refused. Dr. Yelkov, ever the ruthless pragmatist, drew his weapon and fired one single shot through the unnamed doctor's heart. With no one left to stop him, he grabbed a large jar and began to capture the fairies. He managed to catch 30 of them in total before setting off on the journey back to his own laboratory. Once Dr. Yelkov was back in his laboratory, he examined the fairies more thoroughly. They looked like ordinary butterflies at first glance, but a closer look revealed humanoid characteristics: arms, hands, legs, and faces. While inspecting, and performing autopsies on, several of the creatures, Dr. Yelkov determined that the specimens contained unidentified chemicals which react with the oral environment. He isolated these chemicals for further study. Now, the real work could begin. Dr. Yelkov analyzed the way in which the fairies' physiology interacted with sodium monofluorophosphate and hexafluorosilicic acid, and in doing so, was able to reproduce the effects a fairy might have on a human body, recreating it on a common fungus. This was not enough for a finished product, however, as the fungus had no source of calcium that would allow for the formulation of human teeth. He would have to test his new research on human subjects in order to truly gauge its effectiveness. For his first test subject, he selected an 8-year-old child from a camp in Moscow. She was injected with 20 milliliters of the serum he had managed to develop and observed for 10 days without any notable changes. Then, on the 11th day of the trial, the patient was short of breath and complaining of abdominal pain. An X-ray showed a large mass beneath her left lung. 2 days later, the patient was dead, and Dr. Yelkov extracted a large mass of calcium from her lower left abdomen. The cause of death was massive internal bleeding caused by this very mass. Over the course of several more human trials, Dr. Yelkov fine-tuned his serum. It was producing calcified masses in the bodies of the subjects, sure, but Dr. Grigori was expecting teeth. He was getting closer, though. By trial 4, he had managed to create teeth, though they were undeveloped and had not fully grown to the proper size and shape. But it was progress, grim and gruesome as the process was. By trial 19, he had cracked it. The test subject was the teenage daughter of an American businessman named Kyle Schrader, a man so greedy and craven he had sold his own child for medical testing, all for a hefty chunk of change, $2.6 million, courtesy of Dr. Yelkov's patron, Dr. Grigori. This trial was, frankly, horrific to read. I've pored over some disturbing scientific documents in my time, but never something that distressed me quite so much as the tale of a teenage girl sold by her father, made a lab rat by a mad doctor, treated without anesthesia, and lobotomized when she complained. But Dr. Yelkov did not see it as a horror. He was simply elated that his labor had yielded that most calcium-rich of fruits, teeth. He packaged the extracted tooth specimens and sent them to Dr. Grigori for approval, along with 7 other dental practitioners. Now, I am not one to express a belief in karma, per se, and Dr. Grigori's exact fate is unconfirmed to this day, but I can believe we can extrapolate what became of him based on what the Foundation learned about Dr. Yelkov's work. And if my guess is correct, then I believe Dr. Grigori got exactly what was coming to him. When SCP Foundation agents raided Dr. Yelkov's laboratory, they discovered a series of phenomena that were later designated SCP-1994. These, as we can now surmise, were the results of Dr. Yelkov's research with SCP-478. SCP-1994-1 is a serum, the chemical makeup of which has been rather difficult to pin down. Some samples of the serum have had higher levels of sodium monofluorophosphate, while others have had higher levels of hexafluorosilicic acid. Either way, application of this serum stimulates the growth of both maxillary and mandibular tooth structures, all outside of their usual environment of the human mouth. These resulting structures are classified SCP-1994-2, and though they appear identical to human teeth at first glance, they lack the basic structures of teeth. For example, they have no dentin layer or pulp tissue. They are simply solid pieces of dental enamel and are highly vulnerable to decay. As these enamel pieces decay, they release a white powder that is capable of infecting those who inhale it with a version of SCP-478's effects. Individuals infected with SCP-1994-2 powder, or who have been administered a dose of SCP-1994-1 serum, are termed SCP-1994-3. Once exposed, the infection progresses through 5 stages. First, there is initial exposure, after which the subject has no visible signs of infection for up to 2 weeks. Notably, this infection works far less quickly than a direct infestation of SCP-478. During this 2-week period, calcium deposits will begin to develop throughout the person's body, as cell structures ordinarily used for immune system response will reorient to become capable of gathering the components for producing enamel. After the 2-week period is up, and these calcium deposits have been effectively cooking under the skin the entire time, the subject will begin to develop cysts all over their skin, beginning on the limbs before progressing to the head, neck, back, and groin. These cysts are painful to the touch, and the subject will be compelled to resist any attempts to remove them in spite of the pain and discomfort. As the cysts grow and spread, they will rupture the skin and slowly decrease the metabolic functions of the subject. At a point approximately 5 weeks after initial exposure, the cysts will burst open, revealing the mature, adult human tooth that has been growing beneath the surface. Once the tooth has emerged, it cannot be removed from the skin tissue except via surgery. Once the subject has reached this stage, the breakouts of teeth will occur faster and faster, spreading until they have covered all of the extremities, and then will begin to manifest in the soft tissues of the palate, the inner ear, and ocular tissues, spreading to every orifice. This stage of the infection resembles an infestation of SCP-478, though the teeth are lacking the interior nerve and pulp present in those created by SCP-478. Though the teeth may be removed through surgery, as I mentioned, the surgery is only a temporary fix. After any teeth are removed from the body, new growths will form in their place. After 8 weeks following initial infection, the entire body of the subject will be covered in a layer of teeth, or SCP-1994-2. But then, it all gets even worse. The teeth will begin to develop carious lesions across all of their surfaces. It is unknown how these teeth decay, given the fact that they are not exposed to any acid-producing oral bacteria. But they do decay just the same, and the process is highly unpleasant. Over the course of no more than 7 days, all the thousands of teeth across the subject's body begin to show signs of gross decay and release that aforementioned infectious white powder. This is possibly due to the use of fungus in the serum's development phase, as this white powder is somewhat reminiscent of fungal spores. After the subject's body is covered in fully rotten teeth, they will perish in the ultimate stage of infection. The cause of death is due to the combination of weakened immune system, exposure to massive amounts of decay, and the inability to eat anything or receive nutrition intravenously. No subjects have lived longer than 2 weeks past full decay. SCP-1994 was discovered during a raid conducted by the Foundation in collaboration with GRU Division P operatives in the former USSR in 1959. When they raided the laboratory, the Foundation discovered 9 instances of SCP-1994-3. 7 had already died, and 2 were decaying. Dr. Yelkov was nowhere to be found, but the Foundation did recover his notes and journals. The fairies he spoke of in his notes were also nowhere to be found, and the Foundation was unable to confirm their existence for several years. But then, they discovered an instance of SCP-478 in the wild. Dr. Yelkov really had encountered these creatures, captured them, studied them. Any instances of SCP-478 that are found are to be surgically removed from their victims before death and kept in one piece. After they have been recovered, they must be kept in specialized vacuum-sealed lockers in Biosite 66. As instances of SCP-478 do not appear to be able to pass through solid matter, they may be held indefinitely, as long as no damage occurs. Victims who have only been mildly affected by SCP-478 may be given ordinary treatment in a civilian medical establishment, though Foundation surgeons must perform the procedure under the guise of orthodontic surgery. As with ordinary surgery, the patient must be sedated. Victims who have been severely affected by SCP-478 must be taken to Biosite 16 for study. Because of the unique way in which SCP-478 works, infected individuals must not be terminated prematurely. Victims who have been deemed capable of a full recovery are to be treated for infection and released from Foundation custody. After recovering, they must be given a Class B amnestic, and false memories must be planted as to avoid arousing any suspicion. Though the process of infection that SCP-1994-3 instances go through shares some symptoms with an SCP-478 infestation, many of the symptoms differ dramatically. This in particular interests me. It would seem that the chemical components produced by SCP-478 are not the only factor in their effects on the human body. Something else must be responsible, something that requires the physical presence of one of these so-called fairies, rather than just the compounds they secrete or the chemical reactions they cause. Though I disagree deeply with his methodology, I can see why Dr. Yelkov was so compelled to study these creatures. If the Foundation is ever able to track down Dr. Yelkov, provided he is still alive, they may be able to discover more about these tooth fairies. If Dr. Yelkov had left the other nameless researcher alive, he might have learned even more about them, how to communicate with them, for example. If that other man's story is to be believed, these beings are sentient. They have names, their own language, and are capable of intelligent communication. Maybe, with some further study and some cooperative living specimens, the Foundation could learn the secrets of the fairy language just as the other doctor did. Imagine the possibilities if we could speak to these creatures. Perhaps they could ask them why it is they do what they do to us. Perhaps they could broker some sort of peace between the species. Perhaps, and this might be naively optimistic of me, they could ask them to stop. In the meantime, if you find a quarter under your pillow, make sure to check the inside of your mouth. You might just find an uninvited guest. You open your eyes, only to find something blocking your vision. Are those teeth? Human teeth? Growing out of your eyes? Oh no. Oh God, no. Taking the subway can be a real hit or miss experience. On one hand, it's cheaper than driving, especially with gas prices these days. It's convenient, eco-friendly, and removes any potential stress about where to park. But it can also be hot, poorly maintained, and worst of all, it's filled with the public. These are the thoughts running through the woman's head as she stands on the subway on the way home from work. She holds onto a nearby pole for balance, struggling to maintain a bubble of personal space as a steady stream of new passengers climb on at each stop. She can feel her chest tightening with anxiety, and she takes a deep breath to loosen the stress. Just a couple more stops to go, and then she can get out of here and retreat to the comfort of her apartment. The train car slows down, and the doors open for the penultimate stop. Great! After this one, she'll be home free. Of course, more people climb on. Everybody has places to go, she reminds herself. It's fine. But as one pale, jumpy-looking man crowds a little bit too close to the pole she's holding, she feels her anxiety levels spike again. Why won't he just respect her personal space? Come on, buddy. It's a crowded train, but there's enough room to take a step back. She's working up the nerve to say something when the train jerks suddenly, starting back up. The sharp motion sends the man rocking forward, and he bumps into her, hard. She feels a sudden sharp pain in her hand and looks down to see a speck of blood. Seriously? She swears at the strange man, unable to help herself. He glances down, and his eyes widen. He apologizes profusely and backs away from her, unmistakable terror in his eyes. A bit of an overreaction, she thinks. She just yelled a bit. It isn't as if she was going to hurt him. But he pushes through the crowd, moving away from her, and she doesn't care to follow. The train slows, and the doors slide open again. Thank goodness, her stop. She shoves her way out of the train car as fast as she can and doesn't slow down until she's unlocking the door to her apartment. Time to tend to the weirdest injury she's ever gotten. She disinfects the wound on her hand and begins to apply a bandage. Now that she's slowed down, she can get a better look at it. She had assumed the guy's keys had poked her or something, but now, examining it more carefully, it looks kind of like a bite? Did he have some kind of animal up his sleeve or something? It all happened so fast she couldn't really tell. Better to be safe than sorry. She'll go get a rabies vaccine tomorrow. With that plan in place and a bandage applied to her hand, she quickly forgets about the hellish subway ride, the nervous man, and the strange bite. The next day, she gets her rabies shot and puts the whole bizarre encounter out of her mind for good. And it stays there, out of sight and out of mind. Until about a week later, when her gums begin to ache. It starts with a twinge, a bit of discomfort one morning that wakes her up before her alarm. But as the day goes on, the ache grows more and more difficult to ignore. She finds herself chewing on her pen during meetings, alleviating the itching, painful feeling in her gums with the pressure of it. A few days later, it's all she can think about. She half considers picking up one of those hard plastic rings for teething babies. At that point, she realizes it's time to go to the dentist. They'll know what to do. But when the dentist leans her back in that adjustable chair and peers into her mouth, he is just as clueless as she is, perhaps even more so. She's presenting symptoms of a condition known as hyperdontia, he explains. She is, at the age of 30 years old, growing new teeth. Not wisdom teeth that are coming in, but a whole new row of teeth just behind the ones she already has. He advises her to come back in once the teeth have grown in all the way, and they can discuss next steps then. She calls in sick to work the next day. She lies and tells them it's the flu. How could she explain the truth? But at least there's a solution in sight. The dentist will help her figure out what to do next. And surely this will be the worst of it, right? Unfortunately, she couldn't be more wrong. When she wakes up the next day, she notices some difficulty breathing through her nose, accompanied by a feeling of discomfort in her nostrils. Oh great, is she actually sick now? She goes to blow her nose, but nothing comes out. She rubs at her nostrils and is startled by a sudden sharp pain and the sensation of something solid in there. What the hell is going on? She rushes to the bathroom mirror, tilting her head back to get a better look. When she can make out what is blocking her nostrils, her jaw drops. Teeth. They're smaller than the ones in her mouth and somewhat obscured, but there's no doubt about it. Little rows of teeth have erupted inside of her nose. She calls her dentist and schedules an immediate appointment. She struggles to explain on the phone, but no matter what words she chooses, she knows the doctor won't truly understand until he sees her condition with his own eyes. And when he does see it, He can't stop himself from crying out in shock. This is no ordinary case of hyperdontia. This is something else entirely, something that should be medically impossible. Seeing the appearance of teeth inside of the woman's nose, the dentist decides to perform a thorough examination of the rest of her face and head. Much to his and her horror, he finds small teeth beginning to erupt in her ear canals too. He warns that if they are not removed, they could cause permanent damage to her hearing. There's no doubt about it, for the sake of her well-being, the dentist must perform the strangest extractions of his career. The woman is given an anesthetic, and he gets to work. By the time he is finished, the dentist has pulled 36 teeth of varying sizes and shapes from her mouth, nose, and ears. It was a harrowing affair, but at least it's over. He prescribes pain medication, an antibiotic, and some time off of work, and advises the woman to give him a call if she experiences anything like this again. Neither of them will say it aloud, but they're both privately terrified that she'll have to come back in and do it all over again. For the next few weeks, the woman feels like she's back to normal. She's a bit shaken up by the experience, a bit exhausted, but otherwise it all seems to be resolved. Then the aches start up again, not just in her gums this time, but in her ears, in her nose, and more terrifying of all, in new places too. She can feel them, the germs of new teeth growing under the surface in between her fingers and her toes, even in her eyelids. The feeling was unpleasant and distracting before, but now it is absolute agony. She can barely dial the telephone to contact her dentist, but she manages to call him and drag herself down to the office. At first, he doesn't want to believe it, but then he performs an X-ray. The images that come back turn his stomach, and he nearly vomits onto the floor. He can see them clear as day. Teeth, 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 growing everywhere the woman feels that unique ache, the building pressure of something struggling to grow, ready to burst through the skin and be born. More teeth in her mouth, and teeth in her eyes, her ears, all over her body. Even if he extracts every tooth again, even if he plucks out each new growth, there will be more waiting to replace them. Unsure of what else to recommend, he advises the woman to check herself into the hospital. Whatever her affliction is, it has progressed beyond his capabilities. Weeks later, the woman is lying in her hospital bed, weak, exhausted, barely able to move. Her skin is dotted with teeth. Her doctors tried to perform surgery to remove some of the teeth before they could erupt, but the incisions became tiny mouths filled with even more teeth. Now, they've all but given up. She can barely open her eyes to get a look at the strange figures that enter her hospital room, promising to help get to the bottom of her condition. They're scientists, they say, and they specialize in unusual conditions like hers. This poor, unfortunate woman is considered the first recorded patient to be infected with SCP-2450. SCP-2450 is an infectious disease, the most notable symptom of which is the manifestation of severe hyperdontia in unusual parts of the body. The initial source of the infection has been traced to the location now known as Building 2450, a former men's bathroom and a company service station off of a major motorway in the United Kingdom. It is unknown exactly how the infection is transmitted, but Level 5 HAZ suits have been ineffective at containing and preventing the infection. The disease can affect a wide variety of mammalian species, including but not limited to rodents, dogs, and humans. Approximately 23% of mammals exposed to the initial infection source area will contract SCP-2450. Infection can also be passed through a bite, provided the bite is deep enough to draw blood. Infections from bites occur at a rate of approximately 12%. The initial stage of infection is characterized by the presentation of hyperdontia in various orifices of the body. I am sorry to say that is exactly what it sounds like, the eruption of extra teeth in places where no teeth should be. This generally begins in the mouth, as extra teeth sprout from the gums, the roof of the mouth, and the frenulum beneath the tongue. However, as the disease progresses, any bodily opening can become fair game, including the nostrils, the eye sockets, and other, even less comfortable locations. The size of the teeth varies depending on the size of the opening and tends to be proportional to the space available. Teeth produced as a result of SCP-2450 infection grow at a rate approximately 12 times that of ordinary teeth and can grow from gem to full root completion over the course of a period between 3 weeks and 9 months. depending on size. As the infection progresses, more and more rows of teeth will grow further and further back into the affected orifice. Once all natural bodily orifices have grown at least one full row of teeth, the infection will progress into its next stage. At this stage, parts of the body that form a semi-closed space, such as the spaces between the toes or the armpits, will begin to erupt teeth. If that wasn't horrible enough, any apertures formed on the body via external trauma, such as cuts on the skin, will become growth sites for SCP-2450 teeth. Did you just feel a shiver run down your spine? Me too. My own spine, not your spine, you understand. Back to the matter at hand, which I'm so sorry to tell you does in fact get worse. You see, as the infection progresses and more teeth are growing, the calcium and other minerals required to grow these teeth have to come from somewhere. These minerals will be leached from the body's natural stores, and the process can frequently result in osteoporosis and hypocalcemia. Administering calcium and other mineral supplements to SCP-2450 patients will keep them alive, and they will continue to produce teeth indefinitely if this is the case. You might be wondering if the process of growing all of these teeth is especially painful. Allow me to provide absolutely no reassurance. It is. It has been described as extremely painful and similar to the teething pains experienced by young children as their regular teeth develop and grow in. Much like teething infants, patients will experience a strong desire to address this pain by biting or grinding the affected teeth. However, as the infection progresses, the teeth will begin to erupt in areas that are incapable of biting. In these cases, patients will often grind the teeth against solid objects such as the corners of walls. This activity has been highly discouraged, as it could result in cuts and lacerations that may provide a breeding ground for even more teeth, resulting in a truly vicious cycle. Incidentally, this behavior led to the first recorded instance of SCP-2450 infection via tooth-to-blood contact. SCP-2450 was first discovered by the Foundation during a routine search of medical literature, and on February 19, 2009, the Foundation classified it as an anomalous phenomenon sufficiently distinct from hyperdontia. At that point, standard information suppression policy was applied successfully, and the pattern of outbreaks was then used to trace the source to the aforementioned service station. At that point, a series of quarantines and experimentation revealed that the men's restroom in Wing B was the specific point of origin. As far as the Foundation has been able to determine, there is nothing anomalous about the service station or that particular bathroom, aside from the SCP-2450 infections themselves. The station was first built in 1983 and operated normally for decades. So when and how did everything change? By interviewing cleaning and security staff and reviewing years of security footage, the SCP Foundation was able to tentatively pinpoint the date of origin for SCP-2450 to July 15, 2008. On that day, the following events were captured by security cameras located in the building. First, 3 men in black hooded sweatshirts entered the building, their hoods pulled up to obscure their faces. One of the men carried a large, seemingly empty backpack. Another held an unidentified green implement. The third man had nothing in his hands. Shortly after entering the building, the men stopped outside of the Wing B men's bathroom and spoke amongst themselves. No audio was recorded, and their lips could not be seen, so there is no way of knowing exactly what was said. But whatever it was, the men entered the bathroom a few moments later. Before shutting the door behind them, the last man examined the area, looking to see if they were being followed. Seeing that they were alone, he closed the door, and the 3 of them disappeared. They were inside the bathroom for the next 2.5 hours. Whatever happened in that bathroom is still unknown, as security cameras inside of restrooms are generally frowned upon and tend not to be installed. After those 2.5 hours were up, 2 out of the 3 men exited the bathroom, the man with the backpack and the man who was carrying the green object. The third man was not with them. The backpack now appeared to be full, and a great deal heavier than it was on the way in. The 2 men walked to the main entrance of the building, at which point the one without the backpack stopped and reached into the top pocket of his hooded sweatshirt. He then patted the pockets of his trousers. Whatever he was looking for was not there. He turned to head back into the building, but the other man placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. The 2 argued for a moment before leaving the building and getting into a car. Later analysis of the license plate revealed it to be a stolen vehicle. They drove off toward the south and out of sight. Subsequent attempts to track the men down have so far been unsuccessful. The cleaner on duty that day later reported that one of the bathroom stalls was locked for an unusually long time. When he came back and was able to enter and clean the stall, he spotted a large amount of what appeared to be white gravel on the floor and the lid of the toilet. This is now believed to be dental matter. Speaking of unidentified objects, the green implement from the security tapes was later discovered and identified. It is now referred to as SCP-2450-1 and is stored in Reliquary 87B-6, Locker 12004. SCP-2450-1 is a green plastic toothbrush of unknown make or manufacturer. As you might have guessed, it is no ordinary toothbrush. When a tooth is brushed with SCP-2450-1, the teeth will be worn down to the root at a rapid pace. An entire molar, including the root, can be removed with the brush in 5 minutes. In spite of this, it appears to do no damage to any other surrounding tissue such as the skin or gums. On the back of the handle, the text, "For non-oral use only," is printed. The origins of this toothbrush and the motivations for the men that entered the bathroom stall that day are still unknown. However, given the information that we do have, I feel I can make an educated guess. It is my personal theory that the third man, the one who had never been found, was suffering from an advanced form of the SCP-2450 infection. When the men attempted to treat his condition with the anomalous toothbrush, he had advanced to such a severe state that his body was primarily made up of teeth, and he crumbled apart during the process. His remains were then stuffed into the backpack and taken out of the building. The debris left behind somehow infected the area, leading to the subsequent SCP-2450 infections that have occurred in the area since. I have no way to officially confirm this speculation, of course, but it seems as reasonable of a theory as something can be where anomalous tooth-based diseases and unusually powerful toothbrushes are concerned. Any patients afflicted with SCP-2450 must be kept in Secure War Land 12 and physically restrained in order to contain the infection and prevent any further spread. The initial source of infection is contained at the site of its discovery in Building 2450, which has been disguised as an electrical substation. Building 2450 is kept securely locked and surrounded by a standard substation fence, which has been covered with danger of death warning signs in order to deter any civilians from approaching. The building is kept under constant surveillance, and anyone attempting to enter the premises must be detained and thoroughly questioned. The only method of entering Building 2450 is a double-door system, including an isolation chamber which prevents any small mammals from entering the building. No mammals, with the exception of approved test subjects, may exit the building. One member of Foundation personnel with formal dentistry training must be assigned to monitor all dentistry journals and affiliated news sources for cases that might indicate an outbreak of SCP-2450. If one is detected, swift and decisive action must be taken. There is currently no known cure for SCP-2450. Patients who have been infected with the disease can either be kept alive with mineral supplements and produce teeth indefinitely, or they can slowly lose calcium and vital minerals over time until their body can no longer function. Either way, they will be a prisoner of the teeth until the day that they die, confined to a terrifying, toothy existence. Though those who have already been infected are somewhat doomed, at least until a cure can be found, we can take some comfort in the knowledge that SCP-2450 can be easily avoided. Just stay away from the men's restroom in Building 2450 and try not to let anyone bite you, at least not hard enough to draw blood. Still, the images I saw while looking into SCP-2450 will haunt me for quite some time. In fact, I think I've had my fill of the topic. My gums are beginning to itch, so if you'll excuse me, I think I'll go eat some caramels and forget to floss. Can't let the teeth get too comfortable. The dentist recoils in horror, his instruments clattering to the ground as the patient's thrashing legs kick at the table, sending equipment flying. He's screaming, screeching in agony as the things in his mouth keep pushing out. They're not teeth, they're too thin, slim, and pointed like needles, but pulsing and wriggling like living things. Another stray kick connects with the dentist, pushing him back on the wheels of his stool, which then slides out from under him and sends him down onto the floor too. He scrambles back, hiding under a nearby desk as he watches, trembling with the icy shudder of fear, eyes locked on the patient. and the things crawling out of his mouth. There's dozens of them, maybe hundreds of needle-like protrusions seemingly trying to claw their way out, like the man's face is determined to tear itself into pieces through some relentless force of spite, so powerful that it's called forth these inhuman spines to do the job. One pushes at the soft tissue of the patient's cheek, rupturing through from underneath, punctuated by a rush of red and another screech of agonizing pain. In his desperation, the patient is fumbling with his open wound with one hand, staining his palm while trying to work the tiny rinsing sink next to the dental chair. The tiny jet of water does little to soothe the injury, only washes away the copper taste for a second before yet another spike splits open the man's lip. On the floor, hunched under the desk, the dentist can't move, can't do anything, save for keeping his surgical mask firmly against his face with trembling fingers. The patient lurches over, screaming louder, tears streaming down his face that's quickly becoming less and less recognizable as human below the nose. For the first time in his entire career, the dentist is scared for his life. A routine procedure, that was all it was meant to be. Some nasty pain in his jaw, the patient had said. Now, that same man looks more like a monster as the living spikes continue to poke their way out from his gums, hooking through his cheeks and lips as if trying to climb out of his face like the legs of an angry spider. Then comes the sound of bone cracking, splitting in two, followed by a hollow sob of pain from the patient. The noise makes the dentist's stomach lurch, as if he's going to be sick any second. And as the patient crawls towards him, it only gets worse. The man's face is covered in tears and sweat. Blood and drool pour from his mouth. The sounds of his jaw cracking and breaking get louder, each time making him writhe and cry at the agony. The patient crawls to the cowering dentist, the lower half of his face a mess of broken bone and spine stabbing through his skin. He makes a sound, a garbled, half-wailed noise distorted by the pain and his breaking jaw. It almost sounds like help. Then the next crunch happens, forcing the jaw open. The patient's cheeks split like wet paper, torn apart by the pointed ends of the growing spikes. He drops lifelessly to the floor, all of a sudden still and silent, where only seconds ago he was screaming in pain and fear. The dentist crawls apprehensively out from under the desk and stares in disbelief at the sickening sight of the man's body before him. They're still moving. They're still wriggling out of the bloodied, broken half of the face that the patient has left. Whatever these growths were, these spines, they're alive. A few are literally climbing out of the dead man's cheeks, like insects, crawling erratically over his glassy, open but empty eyes. The dentist hears the muffled noise of commotion from outside his office door, of police arriving at the scene, no doubt after his assistant overheard the agonized screams and called the emergency services. But part of the dentist doesn't register the sounds as real. He ignores it, too fixated on the things now climbing their way out of the dead patient on the floor. They look like toothpicks, slender and pointed at each side, but their movement is quick, definitely insect-like, but also familiar. Then one lifts off the patient's lifeless face into the air, hovering around the office, tapping against the window. Flies. They're like flies. A sudden, piercing cold shard of fear strikes the dentist. The door. He can't let anyone in because the flies might get out. Then his mind wanders to the others in the waiting room, the patient's friends, the other tourists all complaining of pain in their jaws. They were carrying more of these things. They'd contracted parasites. In the blur that follows, the dentist remembers his first port of call had been to contact the CDC, warn them there was a potentially dangerous parasitic infestation in the area. Then, the other group shows up not long after, some secretive specialized division. They never give names, never flash badges, or even say who they represent, but they talk like experts. And within hours, not even days, they've made it all disappear. None of the tourists meet the same fate as the patient who died. Nobody from the area comes into the dentist's practice with the same symptoms, or living spines protruding from their gums. But he still can't sleep. The dentist still can't get the image of the patient's face out of his head, especially in his nightmares. Weeks pass, turn into months that snowball into years. Early retirement and closing down the practice do little to make the bad dreams stop, and nothing provides answers to the lingering questions. What were those spiny parasites? Where had they come from? And who were those shady types who'd made it all go away? The dentist sits at a table alone, eating freshly cooked fish in the corner of an old restaurant he started coming to as a way to try and forget. Enjoy a new lease on life. That's what everyone told him he should do now that he didn't have to stare down plaque-riddled mouths and pull-rotting cavities anymore. Then, something pokes at his inner lip. The dentist freezes, heart twinging in his chest. The feeling instantly conjures up the familiar, frightening face of the patient. Is this how it starts? His tongue probes at the small, sharp object in his mouth. It's a tiny fish bone lodged between his bottom teeth. The dentist breathes a sigh of relief, chuckling softly to himself, feeling his quickened pulse calming back down. He wiggles the fish bone, trying to dislodge it, but it's wedged in tight. So he reaches a hand out to a small pot on the table and picks up a toothpick. Of all the anomalies kept securely contained by the SCP Foundation, few are as vile and unpleasant as SCP-611. For reasons that will quickly become apparent, the personnel at the Foundation have taken to referring to the creatures designated under SCP-611 as the Parasitic Toothpicks. This is a subspecies of Dermatobia hominis, otherwise known as the human botfly. Normal, non-anomalous botflies belong to a family of insects called Ostridae that tend to lay eggs internally within mammals. Some Ostridae larvae will grow within the flesh of their host, others will develop within their gut. Dermatobia hominis is the only species within this family known to routinely parasitize human beings, or rather, that was until the discovery of SCP-611. While other botflies are very recognizably insects, where SCP-611 differs is primarily in its use of a unique, highly specific form of camouflage to implant its eggs into human hosts. As their colloquial moniker implies, instances of SCP-611 will appear to the untrained eye to be ordinary wooden toothpicks. It is unclear at what point in their life cycle SCP-611 takes on this appearance. However, once it does, it will fly around in search of a supply of toothpicks. Upon finding some, it will land near or actually in amongst other toothpicks, at which point the SCP-611 instance will shed its wings, allowing its camouflaged appearance to become even more effective. After this has happened, the fly will enter a passive state, resting in a dormant condition for a maximum of 40 days. If the presence of an SCP-611 instance remains undetected for the duration of this amount of time, then all its life signs will cease and the fly will perish. However, should someone pick up and attempt to use what they think is a toothpick but is actually an instance of SCP-611, then the next part of the parasite's life cycle will commence. The SCP-611 species survives by laying their eggs inside the gums of unsuspecting human hosts. Someone who has come into contact with an SCP-611 instance will initially notice no signs of invasion, nor will they experience any adverse side effects, at least not until after several days. Anywhere between 4 days and a full week after contact, the SCP-611 eggs that have been deposited into a person's mouth will hatch. The newly hatched larvae will then burrow into the host's jaw, causing severe discomfort to whoever has been unlucky enough to be implanted with the eggs. The pain caused by the burrowing SCP-611 larvae is sharp, intense, and continuous. Although given the oral location that they hatch in, this sensation can be wrongly attributed to toothache, a cavity, or some other form of pain caused by a dental issue. As the larvae burrow deeper into a person's jaw, they leave behind open internal wounds. These oral injuries can be prone to serious infections given the sheer number of germs in the human mouth. When experiencing the pain of newborn SCP-611 instances burrowing into the jaw, what is actually being felt by the human host is the larvae feeding. Once they have consumed a sufficient amount, the larvae will then exhibit another significant difference from other species of botfly. They enter a pupa stage, between the immature and mature points of their life cycle, similar to the pupa seen when some caterpillars mature into butterflies. However, in the case of SCP-611, the parasitic toothpick does not require a protective outer shell, a chrysalis, during its pupa stage. It is protected by the body of its human host. As a larva matures into a fully grown SCP-611 fly, its body will grow longer and its outer exoskeleton will harden. This continues until the now adult anomalous botfly's body is long and thin and sharp enough to punch through the skin of the human being it has grown inside. This is, by all accounts, excruciatingly painful for those unfortunate to be used as hosts for developing SCP-611 instances. The pointed, toothpick-like parasites will extrude from beneath the outer surface of the jaw until they have pierced the skin of the host's face, allowing the newly matured SCP-611 fly to now exit its host. Upon reaching maturity, adult SCP-611 still possess their wings, only losing them once having found a suitable supply of toothpicks to hide amongst. Once they have exited their host, the parasitic toothpicks will hover freely through the air, seeking out other members of its species to mate with. There are no discernible differences between any two instances of SCP-611, suggesting that each individual of these botflies is neither male nor female. SCP Foundation researchers have consulted experts in entomology and even those within the Foundation's own ranks who specialize in anomalous parasitology, and all evidence correlates. This is widely considered to be highly unusual for members of an insect population. Given that the SCP-611 species doesn't appear to exhibit any indicators of any biological sexes, this has led to speculation among research personnel that these parasites may not be a naturally occurring phenomenon. Further investigation proposals are still pending review and approval from the Ethics Committee and the O5 Council, with some Foundation staff seeking permission to look further into the origins of SCP-611. There has been growing concern that some person, group of interest, or other entity could be responsible for genetically engineering the parasitic toothpicks, or creating this botfly subspecies through some other anomalous means. It seems implausible that these parasites were able to adapt and evolve to perfectly imitate toothpicks, especially since humans have only used these in the previous few centuries. Many at the Foundation consider it to be highly suspect that an entire subspecies could develop in that short amount of time, unless there was some direct involvement by another party guiding the evolution of SCP-611. Further testing with SCP-611 is still required in order to determine whether their evolution occurred naturally or as the result of deliberate tampering or engineering. However, in the interim, this has done little to belay speculation among Foundation staff. The theories range wildly among different personnel. One states that SCP-611 could be the result of intentional, experimental crossbreeding between botflies performed by members of the Deer College, given their subdimensional locale and teaching of anomalous sciences. Others have posited that the parasitic toothpicks were developed by Prometheus Labs Incorporated, who have a long history of creating anomalies without the Foundation's knowledge or oversight. Regardless of who exactly created them, the mature instances of SCP-611 need to be successful in finding a partner in order for the species to survive. It only has a short time in which to achieve this, though, as the primary adult phase of their life cycle only lasts for a maximum of 72 hours in total, during which time they need to seek out another of their kind, then carry eggs to a suitable place to camouflage themselves. Anomalous entomology researchers at the Foundation have suggested that their rapid life cycle after leaving their human hosts might mean that there are a larger population of SCP-611 instances than initially thought. However, the location where their presence is thought to be more concentrated has been redacted from the SCP Foundation's files. The SCP Foundation first encountered the parasitic toothpicks at an undisclosed time post the year 2000. The exact location of the initial encounter with the anomalous botflies still remains classified, although it has been confirmed to have occurred somewhere in New Mexico. Whether this is the point of origin for SCP-611 is still widely debated, however. There are known to be other species of botflies documented in New Mexico, in particular, those that lay eggs in rabbits, but the presence of other botfly species that use human hosts for their larvae is unconfirmed. Before the Foundation arrived at the scene, a local dentist had been contacted by a group of tourists. They had only recently arrived in New Mexico, and all complained of suffering from severe tooth pain and intense stabbing sensations in their jaws. It is still unknown where these tourists had been prior to their arrival in New Mexico. However, given that they were all infected when they contacted the dentist, it stands to reason they were infected either on arrival to the state or just prior to traveling there. Discovering that each of the tourists was carrying parasite larvae, the horrified dentist quickly contacted the Centers for Disease Control. They were quick to ascertain that this infestation was far beyond even their expertise, prompting SCP agents embedded within the CDC to contact the Foundation. Stepping in to take control of the developing situation, the SCP Foundation was able to isolate the tourist group and offer them treatment. The SCP-611 larvae were removed before they could cause any permanent damage or fatal infections in the hosts. Through interviews with the tourists, Foundation agents were able to trace the outbreak of parasitic toothpicks to a local restaurant, which had been unwittingly playing host to SCP-611 instances for approximately a month. Every employee at the restaurant was rounded up and given Class A amnestics before each of their patrons also received a visit from the Foundation. Those who had also been made into hosts for SCP-611 eggs or larvae were similarly treated and then given amnestics to forget their contact with the parasites. While the vast majority of larvae were removed before they were able to fully mature and leave their hosts, some had already caused extensive damage. Multiple deaths were recorded in the area, attributed to a subsequent SCP-611 infestation that had occurred. Ever since their discovery, SCP-611 instances have been kept securely contained by the SCP Foundation. In accordance with special containment procedures, any instances of SCP-611 are to be sealed within their enclosure at all times. In order to keep the parasites alive, the specimens are provided a single piece of rotting meat per week, as per their dietary requirements. Based on the findings of Foundation researchers, the parasitic toothpicks get the most sufficient nutrition from beef tongue that has been aged at room temperature for around 2 weeks. The enclosure is overseen and maintained by a single SCP Foundation technician that specializes in insect care. When performing any and all duties within the enclosure, technicians are required to wear a full biohazard suit at all times in order to prevent a potential SCP-611 infestation. The temperature of the enclosure is to be lowered to 10 degrees Celsius during routine maintenance, so as to lower the activity level of SCP-611 instances inside. Then, afterwards, when the technician has concluded their maintenance, their biohazard suits are to be thoroughly sterilized, and with good reason. One recorded failure to follow the SCP-611 containment procedures took place on an undisclosed date referred to as Incident 611-1. According to the Foundation incident report, this occurred when a technician's biohazard suit wasn't correctly sterilized following maintenance on the SCP-611 enclosure. Thanks to the lack of proper sterilization, 3 instances of SCP-611 were able to escape containment. Fortunately, 2 were found quickly afterwards, seemingly attempting to get back to the other specimens, as the 2 escaped SCP-611 instances were found tapping against the glass of the observation room that looks into the enclosure. Unfortunately, though, one of the parasitic toothpicks was able to make it to on-site Brick Room 13. There, it was able to find a supply of toothpicks to camouflage itself amongst, and was then picked up and used by an unsuspecting member of personnel shortly afterwards. This led to several eggs being implanted in the staff member's mouth, resulting in larvae burrowing into their jaw and eventually bursting out from beneath their skin. The new population of SCP-611 instances created by this infestation resulted in a redacted number of deaths and an even higher rate of severe mandible trauma. Several staff required urgent medical treatment for extreme facial fractures caused by the sudden exit of multiple matured SCP-611 flies. Those who survived their injuries would return to work at the Foundation, some still with the use of their jaws. Following Incident 611-1, the Foundation saw it prevalent to move the SCP-611 enclosure to a lower level of the facility the specimens were kept at. This placed them further away from any mess halls and break rooms, where they could potentially hide among toothpicks, ready to start another new infestation. As an additional measure to avoid any future accidental SCP-611 exposure to staff, no food products are permitted on the same level as the new location of the enclosure. Any personnel who suspect a possible containment breach, or they might have contracted any SCP-611 larvae, are to report to a Foundation-assigned dental examiner for an oral hygiene check and anti-parasitic treatment when needed.
In blissful sleep, blood begins to leak out of the woman's mouth. Her teeth, they're moving, slithering out of the holes in her gums. Is something pulling them out, or are they just breaking free?
It was supposed to be a sunny Saturday afternoon, warm and mild, without so much as a cloud in the sky. Instead, a storm rolled in, turning the sky gray and thick with dark clouds that drenched the town in a torrent of rain. So the young woman had to scrap her beach plans, and now she's driving through the rain, looking for a way to salvage her day out. What's a good indoor activity? She could go to the library, pick out a book to read, but she could do that any day. This was supposed to be a special day, a little treat after a particularly stressful week at work. As if to answer her silent plea for a rainy day activity, she spots the marquee on the neighborhood movie theater, a special screening of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Not only is catching a movie the perfect way to wait out the rain, they just so happen to be screening one of her childhood favorites. A warm rush of nostalgia washes over her, and she pulls into the parking lot. The screening starts at 2 o'clock, and right now it's 1:50. Perfect. Things are definitely looking up. She parks her car and pushes open the door to the theater. When she crosses the threshold, she's transported from the dreary, rainy day outside to a paradise of sweet treats. The theater went all out with their decorations for the special screening, and it really shows. Massive rainbow lollipops brush the ceiling. There's a balloon arch made to look like it's made of gobstoppers, and they've put up a chocolate fountain next to the popcorn machine. Of course they would have chocolate. What kind of Willy Wonka event leaves out the chocolate? The woman steps up to the counter, where a cheerful worker dressed as an Oompa Loompa greets her. She's already here. Why not treat herself a little bit? She purchases a ticket, along with some popcorn, some jelly beans, a large lemonade, and a big bar of chocolate. The day is really starting to turn around. The movie is just as delightful as she remembered, a mix of whimsy and dark comedy, and the accompanying treats make it even better. As she picks a bit of jelly bean out of her teeth, she feels a slight twinge, a dull ache. Better remember to floss later. She really doesn't need a cavity right now. After the movie concludes, she tosses the remains of her cinematic feast into the garbage and heads home. The rain has stopped, and the sun is peeking out from between the clouds again. It was a lovely afternoon at the movies, the perfect way to save the day from being ruined by the storm. The woman doesn't think about it much more than that for the rest of the weekend, but when she wakes up on Monday morning, something feels off. The toothache she felt a twinge of at the movie theater has gotten worse. By the middle of the week, at least 6 of her teeth are throbbing constantly. Pain medication helps reduce the pain a bit, but the feeling of pressure inside the teeth persists and is distractingly uncomfortable. She calls her dentist to make an appointment, but they can't see her until next week. For now, she'll just have to deal with it, no matter how terrible it feels. The rest of the week passes in a blur of dental distress, and on Friday night, as she brushes her aching teeth, the woman notices something troubling. One of her front canines looks cracked. How did she break it? She hasn't eaten anything hard this week. She's been treating her teeth with the utmost care. But a closer inspection reveals that, indeed, the enamel is cracked. It doesn't look like she broke the tooth from the outside, but like something is pushing out from the inside. She shudders and reminds herself that the dentist will be able to take care of it on Monday. She just has to make it through the weekend, and everything will be fine. At some point during the process of ruminating on the troubles with her teeth, she falls into a restless sleep. The next morning, she wakes up in a state of surprising relief. The pain is gone. She sits up in bed, stretches, and yawns. She catches a glimpse of herself in the mirror across from her bed as she does, and freezes in place. The reason she can't feel her tooth pain anymore is because her teeth are gone. Not all of them, but 6 teeth. The teeth that were aching all week have vanished. Did they fall out in her sleep? She strips the sheets off her bed, shaking them out, searching for any sign of the missing teeth. Nothing. She feels like she's losing her mind. Teeth can't just up and vanish like that. But where could they have gone? Did she swallow them? Her mind races as she struggles to explain the unexplainable. Wait a minute. She can find out exactly what happened the previous night. She has a security camera installed in her room. She'd almost forgotten about the camera, which had been installed a year prior when an old roommate kept borrowing her clothes without asking. She never bothered to get rid of it. With a rush of gratitude for her past self, she pulls up the app on her phone that logs the footage and selects the folder for the previous night. She scans through the footage, seeing several hours of her sleeping body tossing and turning in bed. Then, in the video, her mouth opens. She watches carefully, her eyes widening, as she struggles to process what comes next. On her phone screen, clear as can be, she can see teeth climbing out of her mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, crawling across her face, down her neck, across the bedspread, and onto her bedside table. That would have been enough to leave her questioning everything she thought she knew about the world, but the video keeps playing. The teeth scuttle around her bedside table, then onto her desk, collecting paper clips, a hair tie, some brightly colored post-it notes, a safety pin, a scrap of string, and a barrette. With their chosen items in tow, the teeth crawl down off of the desk, over the carpet, and out of her bedroom door. How are they getting around? They're walking on what look like little tendrils, but she can't figure out where they came from. Little tendrils poking through the cracks in the teeth? She shudders at the thought. While she slept, her teeth came to life and made a break for it? Where did they go from there? Could they still be in her apartment? She shakily opens the door to her room and peeks out. She half expects to see the teeth still in the hallway, but when she checks, there's nothing there. She combs every inch of her apartment next. She isn't sure what she'll do if she finds the teeth, the creatures they've become. Maybe try to capture them and take them to the dentist? But it doesn't matter. Her search is useless. They're long gone. The only evidence they were ever even there is a light speckle of blood on her pillowcase, the sheet, and across the carpet. It's such a small amount, she'd never even know it was there if she weren't looking for it. But now what? She's sitting here with 6 missing teeth, no idea where they went, and no clue what to do next. How could she begin to explain any of this to anyone? She can't, she realizes. So, after taking a moment to weigh her options, she deletes the security footage and leaves a voicemail for her dentist, telling them it's an emergency. She lost some teeth in an accident, she tells them. As for the truth, nobody ever needs to know. She wouldn't even know where to start if she decided to try and tell anyone what happened. Better to just put it out of her mind, get her teeth fixed, and try to move on. Later that night, back at the movie theater, the Oompa Loompa from the concession stand is tidying up in the hours after her shift. The limited run of Willy Wonka special screenings is over, and it's time to put all of the Candy Factory decor back in its respective boxes and switch off the chocolate fountain. She breaks down the giant prop lollipops, deflates the jelly bean balloons, and cleans up the chocolate that spilled onto the counter. Might as well sneak a bit of candy for herself in the process, and use the sugar rush to make the work go faster. It helps a bit, but there's still a lot to do for one employee at this understaffed theater. By the time she's finished, it's dark outside. Time to pack up her things, scrub off that orange face paint, and head home. As she walks through the back door, a shiver runs down her spine. What's that sound? It sounds like scratching and scrabbling inside the wall behind her. She turns, looking for an animal hiding there, but she can't see anything. Maybe it's a mouse? But just as she's about to turn around and head to her car, she sees a flash of light glinting off of something shiny. Metal? All the while, the noise continues, that strange scratching and scrabbling. What the hell is going on over there? There's some sort of unknown thing in the walls of the theater, or between the walls of the two buildings at least. Her curiosity gets the better of her, and she finds herself giving into it. Whatever's in there, she needs to see what it could possibly be. She tiptoes over to the crevice between the theater and the building next door to it and peers into the darkness. She can't quite make out what she sees in there, but there's some kind of shape, like a little box, and she can see movement within the shadows there. What is that? She pulls out her phone and is just about to activate the flashlight function when suddenly the crevice lights up in the glow of tiny spotlights? No, miniature flashlights, like the kind you put on a keychain. They're lined up in a row and all switched on at once to illuminate the structure in front of them. Now she can see what it is, but getting a good look at it doesn't make her any less confused. If anything, it's only more baffling than it was before. The structure is visible now, a twisting mass of nerves and blood vessels wrapped and braided together to form a platform. If she didn't know any better, she'd say it looks like a stage? Yeah, it looks like a stage. And on that stage, constructed from a mixture of trash, string, fabric scraps, buttons, and other random objects, is a set. Paperclips stand tall with colorful buttons attached to the tips of them. At first glance, they resemble the giant lollipops that the movie theater put up for the screenings. And there, in the center of the stage, a long piece of brown ribbon is stretched out to mimic the chocolate river from the movie. A boat made from tinfoil and more of those nerves and blood vessels navigates the chocolate river. The employee was so taken aback by the sight of the makeshift set and stage that she didn't even notice the actors on the stage. When she does, she covers her mouth to stifle a scream. The stage and the set are absolutely covered in human teeth, moving around and putting on a production. On the boat, a tooth dressed in a purple jacket and orange top hat guides a tour group made up of other teeth dressed as the children and guardians from Willy Wonka. She opens the camera app on her phone, focuses it on the bizarre play unfolding in front of her, and begins to record. Otherwise, no one will ever believe what she saw here. Then, unable to do anything else, she watches the show. One tooth, a particularly rotund one, is sucked into a pipe out of the chocolate river with the help of practical effects from the nerves. The employee finds herself sitting on the ground, continuing to record the show. She laughs out loud at the sight of a tooth emerging from backstage painted blue and wrapped in blue fabric to make it look larger and rounder. No, not blue. Violet. It's turning violet. Next, a tooth shrinks, exiting the stage and leaving behind a tiny fake tooth in its place. In between each transformation, another child leaving the chocolate factory tour, a group of orange-painted teeth comes out to perform a dance number. At first, the employee expects them to sing songs of disapproval too, but realizes quickly that these teeth don't have mouths of their own, and therefore can't sing. Still, it's all quite impressive. For the fizzy lifting drink scene, the teeth playing Charlie and Grandpa Joe are lifted up into the air by nerve tendrils, approaching a fan made from safety pins and aluminum foil. It's actually quite tense to watch, and if the employee had an actual seat, she'd be on the edge of it. Then, the show concludes, and an audience full of teeth that she couldn't see before stand up, clapping their tendrils together in a thunderous round of applause. It's the most bizarre thing she's ever seen in her life, but she can't deny that it was entertaining. The teeth then begin to clean up the set, striking pieces and tucking them away in the darkness. Once the set has been broken down, they all scuttle out of sight. And it's over. The employee drives home in a state of shock, uncertain about what to do next. She eventually decides to upload the video footage to the internet, titling the video, "Willy Wonka Performed by Teeth?" By the following day, it has a few thousand views and some skeptical comments. By the day after that, it has a copyright strike and has been removed from the internet. So much for getting the word out about the teeth. The employee never forgets about them, but she gives up on trying to tell people about what she saw. That tooth-based theatrical production is just for her memories now. Meanwhile, local dentists are noticing a pattern. Everyone who attended the screenings of Willy Wonka at that specific movie theater experienced dental issues, followed by sudden, unexplained tooth loss. It's such a concerning trend, it attracts the attention of the SCP Foundation, who began a thorough investigation. After some time looking into it, they designate the phenomenon SCP-3827. SCP-3827 is a cognitohazardous phenomenon that is known to affect certain movie theaters across the United States. Audience members at theaters impacted by SCP-3827 will later report statistically unusual rates of dental problems, including but not limited to gingivitis, pulpitis, and degradation of the dental enamel. It is unknown what exactly causes a theater to be subject to the influence of SCP-3827, but the effects of the anomaly can be exacerbated by the consumption of high-sugar concessions by moviegoers, by screenings of films that prominently feature teeth in at least one scene, or a combination of the two. If it were as simple as just an increase in dental problems, the anomaly might not warrant much Foundation attention, just an increase of fluoride in the local water supply and perhaps an alert to dentists in the surrounding area. However, it does not begin and stop at dental pain and discomfort. The living centers, or pulps, of affected teeth, referred to from now on as SCP-3827-A, will begin to noticeably change over the course of a week following exposure to the cognitohazard. They will grow and expand to the point of pain, causing the enamel of the affected teeth to crack and split from the internal pressure. After approximately a week has passed, the SCP-3827-A instances will eject themselves from the jaws of the affected person while they sleep. Once freed from the jaw, these teeth will push portions of their nerves and blood vessels through the cracks in the enamel, using them as limbs. Now capable of independent movement, the teeth will move themselves around the area, stealing small items such as loose trash, scraps of fabric, buttons, and pins. Once they have grabbed an object of interest, the teeth will attempt to leave the area. Sometimes the teeth are stopped by witnesses, a misplaced step, or a house pet, but frequently they make it out of the house and reach their intended destination. But where do they go next? Naturally, Foundation researchers were curious about the movements of SCP-3827-A instances. So, one affected moviegoer was fitted with miniature tracking devices during a dental checkup at a Foundation-affiliated office. Later that night, when the teeth ejected themselves from the person's mouth, the Foundation was able to track them. The research team followed the tracking device's signal back to the movie theater where these SCP-3827 effects originated, where the affected individual had seen a screening of the then-recent film Life of Pi. The researcher who was tracking the signal followed it all the way to a small crevice in the concrete outside of the theater. He pulled a flashlight from his pocket and cast its light into the crevice. There, he spotted a structure resembling a small theater composed of chips of what appeared to be tooth enamel. On the makeshift stage, several dozen instances of SCP-3827-A were putting on a performance. From the animal costumes and the set piece of a boat constructed from aluminum foil, the agent was able to determine that the living teeth were performing their version of the events of Life of Pi. He stood there for the next hour, allowing them to finish their performance before collecting the instances and bringing them into Foundation containment. Notably, after some time in containment, the teeth began putting on original productions, in addition to live stagings of their favorite films. One original production was described by a research assistant as Star Wars, but with werewolves in it. He added that it was quite moving, actually. I cried. After SCP-3827 was identified and the Foundation was able to properly understand its nature, a set of containment procedures were put into place. Foundation agents embedded within the film industry have been instructed to introduce scenes and motifs involving teeth into films by major studios, particularly those belonging to especially successful franchises. This is intended to root out, no pun intended, theaters affected by SCP-3827. These theaters can then be closed down, the SCP-3827-A instances contained, and any affected individuals can be anesthetized. Contained instances of SCP-3827-A are kept in standard containment cells. As an incentive for good behavior, they are gifted with spare scraps of trash and may be shown a screening of a new film once a month. An addendum has been added to the official file, which I will include here for reference. Following successful Foundation interference with the production of the 2015 film Avengers: Age of Ultron, namely the inclusion of a short sequence depicting the character Iron Man knocking a tooth loose from the Hulk, Foundation agents managed to identify and close down 119 theaters affected by SCP-3827. Despite no new instances having been discovered since, current procedures are to continue until further notice. We go to movie theaters for magic, to laugh, to cry, to care. In my personal opinion, the movies are a sacred place, one where we shouldn't have to worry about our teeth jumping out of our skulls and running off to start a theater troupe. But in this world, things don't always go as planned. Hopefully, all of the theaters affected by SCP-3827 have been shut down for good, but you never know for sure. Sometimes, a film brings out emotions in you that you never expected. And sometimes, it brings out your teeth, too. Nobody likes going to the dentist. The smell of the chemicals, the sound of the drill, the indignity of talking with someone's hands in your mouth. But as you settle into the dentist's chair, something about this particular visit feels especially wrong. Why are the hygienists looking at you like that? Who is this strange doctor entering the room? And why does your mouth feel so full all of a sudden? You can't move, you can't scream, and your teeth, they're multiplying? The man has been ignoring his persistent toothache for several weeks, but he just can't take it anymore. The dull ache has become a head-pounding throb of pain that cuts through every single thought. But of course, he waited far too long to treat it, and now here he is on a Sunday evening, trying to find a dentist who will give him an appointment. It's not his fault, he tells himself. He's been terrified of the dentist since he was a little kid. It takes a lot of pain to counteract that kind of phobia, but now he's reached that threshold. As he's browsing the internet, desperate to find an office that's open on Sundays, he spots an ad. Dr. Hendricks, dentistry 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The man isn't sure how that's possible, but the pain has made him desperate, so he calls the number on the ad and makes an appointment. The receptionist sounds a bit funny on the phone, like she has something in her mouth, but he brushes it off. 15 minutes later, he's walking into the office and checking in at the reception desk. The woman sitting there looks a bit unusual, but his mother raised him not to stare, so he gives her a polite, distant nod, declines her request to inspect his teeth for herself, and ignores the strange feeling in his gut at her words. Instead, he continues on to the exam room and waits for the doctor to take his pain away. He waits for quite some time, until he begins to worry that the dentist forgot about him. Or perhaps this office really was too good to be true, and this is some sort of scam. But then the door opens, and in comes Dr. Hendricks with a cheerful demeanor and a smile in his eyes. His mouth is covered with a surgical mask, so the man can't be certain, but he seems like he's definitely smiling. It's a good thing the man came in so quickly, the dentist assures him. His teeth are in dire straits. But don't worry, he's in very, very good hands, and by the time he walks out of the office, he'll be in great shape. The man asks the dentist if he can be put under for the procedure in order to prevent him from panicking. The dentist laughs uproariously at this request, but he agrees. He places a gas mask over the man's face, and the hissing sound of the gas fills the room. The man's eyes grow heavy, and the sterile white room fades to black. When the man wakes up, he's sitting on the sidewalk outside of the office, a plastic bag of mini mouthwash clutched in his hand. And his mouth. Oh God, his mouth. It's aching like nothing he's ever felt before. But something else is wrong too. He reaches up to feel around his mouth with his fingers, and all the color drains from his face. His mouth is absolutely crowded with teeth. So many teeth, his tongue can't move without poking up against them. He expected to leave the dentist with one tooth missing, but instead, somehow, he has 30 more than he started with. Unfortunately for this man, who only wanted to have a toothache treated, he stumbled into the clutches of SCP-5150. SCP-5150 is a dental office located outside the northwestern perimeter of Indianapolis, Indiana. The office building occupies an area of approximately 140 square meters, and the interior measures 115 square meters. The building is unremarkable in every way, with the exception of an electrical sign above the building's front entrance, which reads, Dr. John Hendricks, DDS. Inside the building, there are 6 rooms and several anomalous entities designated SCP-5150-1, SCP-5150-2, and SCP-5150-3. SCP-5150-1 is the dental office's receptionist. Of course, as you may have already gathered, she is no ordinary receptionist. The entity has standard humanoid features, with the exception of the oral cavity. The entity's maxillary and mandibular bones, or upper and lower jaw, are disfigured and mutilated and have been noted to have missing incisors, extra canines, and bleeding gums. The entity seems to have an intense interest in human teeth, and once she has gotten her hands on some, her anomalous properties will begin to manifest notably. She will insert stolen human teeth into her mouth and into her gums. This appears to be intended to correct the issues with her oral cavity, but the exact motivation for this behavior is still unknown. Anyone who enters SCP-5150 must interact with SCP-5150-1 at her reception desk in order to continue through or exit the building, regardless of how much aggression she displays toward them. SCP-5150-2 refers to several anomalous dental hygienists that populate the entirety of SCP-5150, with the exception of the waiting area. These entities resemble the receptionist, but move more freely throughout the building rather than being confined behind a desk. They are similarly aggressive and will attack human subjects in order to apprehend them and bring them into one of the examination rooms. They carry a variety of dental instruments on their person and will happily use these instruments as weapons in order to subdue their victims. Once the hygienists have taken a human subject to an exam room, they will strap them to an operating table and prepare them to meet the remaining entity lurking within the office. Then it's time for the unfortunate human subject to meet the dentist himself, SCP-5150-3, also known as Dr. John Hendricks. This entity spends his time in the examination rooms as well as his personal office. When he is presented with a patient, he will begin to insert teeth directly into their mouth, where they will anomalously take root and result in extreme cases of hyperdontia. The source of these additional teeth is currently unknown. Once the operation is complete, and Dr. Hendricks is satisfied with the amount of teeth he has forced into his patient's mouth, he will then attempt to give the subject a plastic bag containing a variety of over-the-counter oral healthcare products. These can include a toothbrush, dental floss, mouthwash, and toothpaste. The subjects will not be allowed to leave the building without taking this bag with them. Analysis of these products has not revealed any anomalous properties. On July 9, 2023, the SCP Foundation conducted an investigation of SCP-5150. Subject D457142 was ordered to investigate and explore the building. He was equipped with a camera and microphone, as well as a chocolate bar, which was placed in his pocket for emergency use. Control lead was assigned to Bobby Daniels, and Marcus Drago and Andrew Fuller were additional team members on the investigation. D457142 approached the building, but hesitated before going inside. He asked what would happen after he entered the building, but Daniels refused to elaborate. His questions went unanswered. With no other option, D457142 entered the building. When he opened the door, a doorbell dinged to signal his entry. As the door closed behind him, he could hear a click as the lock slid into place. This sent the man into a state of anxiety, and he attempted to open the door. It wouldn't budge. He called out to Control over the microphone, begging them to unlock the door, promising that he would not run. Daniels at Control explained that he couldn't do anything about it, as the Foundation had no control over the doors. That lock was all SCP-5150's doing. After some hemming and hawing, D457142 had no option but to proceed and continue into the waiting area of SCP-5150. Inside, he saw a row of 4 chairs, a smattering of assorted toys common to any medical waiting room, and more chairs. There, off to the side, was the counter, and behind a sheet of glass with a small opening approximately 1.2 meters tall and 0.8 meters wide, the receptionist was waiting. Strangely, the camera feed was not able to pick up any of the receptionist's physical features, leaving the test subject alone to observe her and try to make sense of what he was seeing. Nothing was especially out of the ordinary in the room at first glance, aside from the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer playing on one of the waiting room TVs. The subject walked through the room, taking note of everything that he saw. Then he turned to face the receptionist. The receptionist was dressed in a white-collared shirt with a white face mask covering her mouth. There was a sheet of paper directly in front of her. She greeted the test subject. "Hello, sir. Can I help you schedule an appointment?" Unsure of what else to do, the test subject played along. He asked her how to proceed with scheduling, and the receptionist handed him a pen and directed him toward the paper in front of her. She instructed him to sign and then wait for his appointment with Dr. Hendricks in 5 minutes. Once the subject signed the paper, the receptionist stated, "Now, before you can enter, there's one thing I'll need to see." The subject agreed, asking what she needed to see. The receptionist responded, "Your teeth, of course. May I see them?" As you might expect, the test subject found the request off-putting and inquired why she might need to see his teeth. She responded in a friendly tone. "I'm currently taking online classes for dentistry and I need experience. Occasionally patients will let me take a look at their teeth so I can predict how well an appointment with Dr. Hendricks will go. Will you let me try with you?" The subject relented, opening his mouth. As soon as he did, the receptionist reached out and grabbed hold of the lower left quadrant of the man's jaw. The receptionist praised the man's teeth, exclaiming how clean they were. Then she quickly pulled a pair of pliers from underneath her desk, clamping them to the bottom central incisors of the subject's mouth. She pulled toward herself with a sudden, sharp yank, extracting the teeth from the subject's mouth in less than 1 second. The test subject recoiled, clutching at his mouth and screaming in pain and shock. Blood dripped onto the camera lens as the subject struggled to wipe it away. He stumbled toward a nearby tissue box, grabbing a fistful of tissues to sop up the blood and stem the flow. Meanwhile, the receptionist went about her business. She stared at the 2 bloody teeth in her hand, admiration in her eyes. Next, she removed her face mask, revealing her disfigured oral cavity, and began to forcefully insert the new teeth into empty areas of her gums. As the subject backed away from the reception desk in horror, the receptionist called out, "Dr. Hendricks can see you now, sir. Please head to room 3 for your examination." Of course, the subject was reluctant to continue into the building, but Control insisted that he go through the door leading to the exam rooms. At first, he refused, but after a reminder that he was locked in and the promise of a medical team waiting for him after the investigation was finished, he saw no option but to move forward. So he tossed his bloody wad of tissue paper in the trash and pushed through the next set of doors. As before, he could hear the click of the lock behind him, trapping him inside. He stepped carefully into the hallway, pressing his body against the left side of the wall as the sudden sound of laughter echoed through the hall. Where was it coming from? Who could be laughing somewhere like this? He wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. He continued through the hall, edging along the wall. Suddenly, he froze, crouching down to hide as one of the hygienists exited a nearby door. The entity passed him without noticing him, entering another exam room. The subject continued until he reached the far side of the hallway where a door with the nameplate John Hendricks was waiting. He opened the door and entered. There was no one inside. He checked in with Control, asking for instructions on what to do next. Control advised him to look for anything that could potentially be important. Documents, research papers, journal pages, anything that might shed some light on the nature of SCP-5150. He obeyed and began to search the desk, but found it was empty. Just then, the door to the office opened, and a hygienist called out to the subject, "What are you doing? We have another room waiting for you." At this point, cornered and with nowhere to run, the test subject grabbed his emergency chocolate bar and unwrapped it. At the sight of the sugary treat, the hygienist screamed and backed away. Two other entities appeared, wielding sharp double-sided probes used during dental examinations. The three entities advanced toward the subject. In a panic, he threw the chocolate bar, and it collided with the third hygienist. The entity shrieked, its mouth beginning to bleed as its teeth rapidly decayed. But now the subject was left unarmed and could not defend himself against the assault of the other two entities. They grabbed hold of him, one entity stabbing the subject with the probe, while the other bit down on his exposed forearm hard enough to draw blood and crack the bone. As he cried out in pain and fear, with no one able to save him, the subject was dragged to exam room 3. There, the hygienist strapped him down on an operating table, tying him in place with leather straps. "You can trust us, sir," one of the entities said. "We'll just need to pull some teeth before the dentist arrives." At this point, the entities removed the subject's 2 lower canines and 3 molars, all while he remained conscious and screaming. Then the door opened, and another entity came into the room. The doctor was in. At the sight of the dentist, the test subject began to spit various expletives. Dr. Hendricks met the verbal assault with an amused chuckle.
"What a tongue! Why so harsh? Don't worry, this is for your own good. I know it may be scary, but it'll all be done with soon."
The dentist spotted the camera, removing it from the subject's body.
"Is this for a home video? Well, no matter. Technically, this does break some patient-doctor confidentiality laws, but I can let this one slide. Here, let me get this at an angle where it can record better."
He placed the camera in the far right corner of the room, where it captured video of both the subject and Dr. Hendricks. All the while, the subject's mouth continued to bleed. The dentist continued to speak.
"There we go, much better. Now, where were we? Oh, that's right. By the looks of it, it seems like they've already started. It's a shame. Your teeth aren't looking so great right now, but that's why you're here. I can help make it all better."
The dentist retrieved several medical cleaning supplies from the side of the room, as well as an array of syringes. Then, he was ready to work. The test subject's nightmare was far from over. The dentist elevated the operating chair and inserted a Jennings gag device into the subject's mouth in order to keep it open. What happened next could have been briefly mistaken for an ordinary teeth cleaning, other circumstances aside. The dentist used a dental mirror and several tools to pick and scrape at the remaining teeth in the subject's mouth, as if checking for plaque and tartar. Next, however, things got a bit more gruesome. He swapped the probing tools for a dental drill and began to dig into the subject's gums and inner cheeks. The drill was used on the subject's mouth for a duration of 15 minutes. If you're concerned about the lack of anesthetic used during these procedures, allow me to clarify that various high-quality anesthetics were administered. However, they were injected in the wrong locations or at insufficient dosages to adequately reduce the subject's pain. Sadly, he was fully aware of every agonizing sensation. After 2 hours, the dentist cheerfully remarked,
"We're almost done with the cleaning."
He added,
"You're doing just fine. See, I knew you wouldn't be so snappy after I started my work. Don't worry, I'll just have to do one more thing. But before I can do that, I'll have to move your camera. I can't allow this to be recorded. You understand, right?"
He turned the camera so that the lens faced the wall, preventing any visuals of what happened next from being captured. This is especially unfortunate, given that this was the point in the procedure at which the dentist's anomalous abilities manifested. The nature of these abilities is still, sadly, unknown. All that was captured by the microphone was moans of pain and the sounds of crunching as the subject's new teeth crowded into his gum line. After 20 minutes, the procedure was complete, and the dentist handed the subject a bag filled with various oral care items. Eventually, the subject was able to exit the building. When he emerged, he was pale and shaking, with splatters of blood down his shirt and an extreme case of hyperdontia. There were so many teeth present in the subject's mouth that he was unable to speak coherently. He was then taken to Site 334's infirmary, where his hyperdontia was treated and he was debriefed. After treatment, he was given amnestics and released. At this point, any further experimentation with SCP-5150 was suspended, pending the judgment of the Ethics Committee. No follow-ups were conducted with the test subject. Still, I would be personally curious to know if his ordeal left him with a lifelong phobia of the dentist, even after the application of amnestics. I certainly don't believe I would ever be the same again. SCP-5150 was placed under containment within Provisional Site 334. A disinformation campaign and cover story for this provisional site was established concerning the fictional Hops Railroad Company. This was intended to hide SCP-5150 and any of its related media, including poster advertisements, newspaper articles, and social media posts. In the event of unauthorized access to SCP-5150, all personnel were required to be detained and immediately transferred to the on-site infirmary upon exiting the building. Excess teeth would be removed and stored there, and personnel would be given a thorough evaluation before being given Class C amnestics. All on-site personnel who interacted with SCP-5150 in an approved capacity were required to carry one candy bar containing a minimum of 35 grams of sugar at all times. You may be wondering why these containment procedures are detailed in the past tense. Well, there's a reason for that choice. The current containment procedures are no longer up to date, as the anomaly is no longer adequately contained. As of August 1, 2023, the building originally designated as SCP-5150 is completely absent of anomalous entities or paranormal activity. It is unknown how or why this shift took place, but the anomaly appears to have moved rather than disappeared. On September 22, 2023, posters advertising the dental practice of one Dr. John Hendricks were reported near the city of Greenwood, Indiana. All personnel assigned to Provisional Site 334 have been given a new directive: relocate and recontain SCP-5150 wherever it is migrated to. The dental health of innocent people depends on it. Remember to take good care of your teeth, brush and floss every day, and be sure to attend your regular dental checkups. And of course, always count your teeth before and after an appointment, just in case.
Tell me if it starts to hurt, the dentist says before reaching into your mouth with a pair of orthodontic pliers and starting to pull your front teeth back into place. Evidently, your screams aren't enough of an indication of the extreme pain you feel because he doesn't stop pulling. After what feels like hours of excruciating oral surgery, you're finally standing outside the dentist's office texting with a friend. "Come on, show me. It can't be that bad," reads the message from your friend. You're nervous to send her a picture, though, since you have a small crush on the girl and you don't want her to see you in this state. But after she asks you again, you decide to take a quick selfie and send it to her anyway. You snap a photo of your mangled mouth and jaw. The mess of wires had to be hastily applied to move your remaining crooked teeth back into place with globs of fast-hardening epoxy, and the result looks like a low-budget horror movie prosthetic. You send the message and wait. You watch the dots appear that indicate she's writing a response, then watch as they disappear without a reply. You sadly slip the phone back into your pocket and begin walking away. As you make your way home with your head hung in shame, you keep your mouth shut tight. You don't want any passers-by to see what you've become. You decide to detour through the park to avoid any people as much as possible, and as you walk, you decide to stop at a picnic table next to a small pond. You sit at the table and watch the ducks mill about in the water. They have it so lucky, you think. Ducks never have to worry about their teeth getting knocked out by a baseball and leaving them looking like a monster. The ducks suddenly all start moving away from your side of the pond, eventually taking flight and leaving completely. You get the sense that they're trying to get away from something, and you turn around, but there's nothing behind you. Oh, it must be me, you think. But then you get the sense that there is something behind you, and turn again. Still though, there's nothing. It's just you, the picnic table, and the empty pond. You turn back to watch the still water, but you can't shake the feeling that there's someone behind you, and turn again. "Hello? Is anyone there?" you ask, but no one answers. You turn back to the pond and you scream in fright at the thing standing before you and fall back off the picnic table. You get up out of the dirt and you don't wait to stick around to see who or what this thing is. You start to run as fast as you can, but you immediately hear it chasing after you. Instinctually, you take out your phone, and start trying to take pictures of whatever it is that's behind you. You know no one will ever believe you, and you want some evidence of this thing. You manage to snap off a couple of pictures, but you can hear the creature gaining on you. You scream as your mouth begins to ache. Perhaps running this soon after your surgery is causing your damaged teeth to shift, and the pain is intense. It starts to feel like your mouth is full of jagged rocks, but you can feel that it is your teeth pushing out and stabbing into your mouth. You take one last picture before the creature leaps on you, sending you both to the ground, and your phone tumbling into the dirt. Early the next morning, a police perimeter has been set up in the park. The detective arrives and walks past the traumatized-looking jogger who must have been the one that discovered the grisly scene. An officer guarding the site lifts up the police tape so the detective can enter the crime scene that surrounds a body lying under a white sheet. The detective asks the officer if they've found anything yet, and the officer hands the detective a plastic bag containing a dirty cell phone. The detective puts on a latex glove and removes the phone from the bag. The screen is cracked, but it still works. There's numerous messages on the screen that look like they're from someone trying to apologize for not responding sooner, and asking where the phone's owner is and if they're mad at her. The detective opens the phone's camera app and starts looking at the last photos that were taken. It's a strange series of pictures. They seem to all be selfies that a young man was taking as he ran through the park. It almost appears as though there's a figure behind him, but it's hard to tell. There's a foggy white vignette on the pictures that gets worse the further he looks, slowly closing in until the last photo is nothing but a blurred milky white screen. The detective flips the phone over and looks at the lens, which you can see is completely covered in a hard white substance. The detective places the phone back in the evidence bag and kneels down next to the body. The police officer turns away. He's already seen the victim and doesn't need to again. The detective pulls down the sheet to reveal a truly shocking sight. The boy's mouth is a mess of teeth, far, far too many teeth. There are teeth growing out of every part of his gums at horrible angles, filling his mouth and jutting out at painfully odd angles. Who could have done this? What could have done this? The local police department may not have had any idea what the state of this victim meant, but the SCP Foundation did, because they had seen the same occurrence dozens of times before. In fact, they had seen it happen so many times that they had classified this anomalous entity as SCP-4910, but it had already earned a much more ominous nickname within the Foundation. It was known as the Grinner. Very little is known about SCP-4910, and eyewitness accounts of the creature are all extremely brief due to those who have interacted with it quickly succumbing to its effects. What is known is that SCP-4910 is a quadruped and appears to be made partially, or perhaps entirely, out of teeth. Those who encounter SCP-4910 quickly experience its primary anomalous effect, which is that it causes the extremely rapid overproduction of teeth in its victims' mouths. Existing teeth will quickly increase in size, protruding farther out of the gums than should be able, while new teeth will begin to sprout from any available space in the mouth, including the roof of the mouth and underneath the tongue. These new teeth will completely fill the mouth, which almost immediately inhibits their ability to speak or vocalize at all. The creature will then use this opportunity to attack and incapacitate the victim before starting to feed. Further adding to the mystery of SCP-4910's appearance comes from the effect it has on any nearby recording equipment. Cameras and other devices that come within SCP-4910's proximity will have their critical components compromised by a sudden appearance of a layer of dentin, which is the calcified material that partially makes up teeth. Interestingly, SCP-4910 seems to possess some level of intelligence, as it appears able to differentiate between normal civilians, who it hunts for sustenance, and members of organizations that seek to hunt down and contain or harm it, which it uses for an even more nefarious purpose. While the exact mechanics are still unclear, it seems as though SCP-4910 is able to infect certain anomalous organization members with its ability, causing them to act as a vector for the effect, who then spread it to even more victims. This effect is, of course, of great concern to the Foundation, and containment protocols for infected victims have been hastily put into place. Should a member of staff begin bearing a grin with too many teeth or multiple tooth-filled smiles, they are to be immediately immobilized by any means necessary, though preferably with a firearm that allows one to keep an appropriate distance and hopefully prevent any further spread of the effect. The infected individual is then to be doused in a hydrochloric chemical compound that will reduce the afflicted to a pulp-like substance. Once this pulp is no longer animate, it can be transferred to the closest incineration site for disposal. Should a member of personnel have an interaction with SCP-4910 and feel that they were exposed to its anomalous effects, they may be saved by taking immediate medical action. Oral surgery to remove the additional teeth has been found to be effective when the procedure is undergone in the first 1 to 2 hours following exposure, though the victim will suffer lifelong permanent physical issues from the procedure. Once 3 hours have passed, the effect will have spread to the rest of the body, with teeth appearing virtually anywhere. Unfortunately for the victim, should the infection reach this point, pain management has been shown to be ineffective, and there is nothing that can be done to alleviate their suffering, save for termination. SCP-4910 remains at large and has been given the Keter classification. Mobile Task Force Epsilon, codenamed Turfing Black, is the only MTF authorized to respond to sightings, and they have been given permission to engage the creature and utilize lethal force if necessary, due to the danger this anomaly presents specifically to the SCP Foundation.
A body twists and turns into unimaginable shapes. Eyes glow in the dark. Shadowy entities appear around you, mimicking your every move. Would you like a stick of gum? In a small seaside town nestled just along the coast of New England, and at least an hour's drive away from any major city, there isn't much to do but brave the chilly ocean waters, crowd onto the rocky beach, or walk along the boardwalk. For most of the residents of this quaint little town, the choice is clear. Years ago, when the town was at the height of its success as a tourist destination, visitors would flock from all over the country, descending on the boardwalk like the seagulls that swarm around the food stands in search of an errant French fry. In its heyday, the boardwalk boasted a small amusement park with a roller coaster and a Ferris wheel, an arcade with the latest in 1980s video game technology, several stands selling hot dogs and crispy French fries coated in grease and salt, and the pride and joy of many a local, a classic, old-fashioned candy store. Today, the arcade is all but empty, with 1 or 2 players occasionally wandering in to try their hand at the now vintage attractions inside. The amusement park is still standing, but the rides have faded and chipped. The stands still sell their wares, but the lines are shorter than they once were. And at the center of it all, the beloved candy shop is struggling to hold on. The price of waterfront property has climbed, while tourism has dwindled. And with online shopping taking over the market, well, the candy shop's owner can scarcely scrape enough money together to keep the roof over his head. On this particular day, the shop owner is restocking his shelves, the door propped open to let in just enough of the crisp, salty ocean breeze to keep his head clear and his spirits up. It's getting harder and harder to maintain the cheerful demeanor he's known for, to step into his red and white striped suit every day and smile for the few tourists who poke their heads into the shop. But still, he keeps at it. He loves this little store, and he'll keep holding on to it until there's nothing left to hold. He fills glass containers with colorful little hard candies, slides boxes of saltwater taffy onto shelves, and places blocks of fudge in the glass case by the cash register. All the while, he takes a little sample of each product for himself. A candy here, a small square of fudge there, to keep his energy up. Besides, he would never sell a product he didn't taste test first, only the best for his customers, though they were few and far between these days. Especially this time of year, as the air grows colder and the days get shorter, sunshine becomes a limited commodity as the summer turns to autumn. So it comes as quite a surprise to the older man when he hears a knock at the shop door. He turns and sees a delivery man standing there with a stack of packages. This is especially odd, as he can't recall ordering anything. But the delivery man explains that these packages are product samples from an up-and-coming candy company, one specializing in novelty chewing gum. They are providing samples to a variety of small candy businesses, as well as larger retail outlets, in order to conduct market research. These particular flavors, the delivery man promises, cannot be found anywhere else. Well, the promise of a new, exclusive product to draw new customers in is more than a little bit exciting for the shopkeeper. Without a second thought, he signs for the packages and carries them inside. The shop has carried a few varieties of chewing gum over the years: mint, cinnamon, fruit, and even prank gum that turns a person's tongue black when they chew it. What could possibly be so unique about this gum? He's determined to find out. As he cuts open the boxes, the shopkeeper is greeted with brightly colored packaging that looks, for the most part, like any other gum packaging out there. He does quickly notice one unusual difference, though: the flavor names. Each of them begins with the phrase, "tastes like," which is a clever enough branding choice, but the flavors themselves are odd. He lifts the first packet and reads its label, brow furrowing in confusion. Tastes like youth.
What could that possibly mean? For a novelty candy, this gum sure is especially novel. Well, he never stocks a product without trying it out for himself first, so he unwraps a piece of the bright pink gum and pops it into his mouth. The first thing that he notices is the taste, an overwhelming sweetness tinged with nostalgia. It tastes like cotton candy, but not just any cotton candy. It tastes like the cotton candy he once enjoyed as a little boy on this very boardwalk, a flavor he hasn't experienced in 60 years. The next thing that he notices is that his eyes are aching all of a sudden. He takes off his glasses for a moment and is shocked by what he sees. Everything, clearly, without the aid of the lenses. His vision is like it was when he was a young man, before age had blurred the edges of everything in his line of sight. His joints have stopped aching, and he feels a sudden surge of energy, the sudden urge to run, to jump, to click his heels together. He rushes to the bathroom mirror, half expecting to see his younger face staring back at him. No, he still looks the same, but he feels decades younger. His mind reels, and he can't think of anything to do but laugh. This gum. It should be impossible, but this piece really does taste like youth. This might just be the product that saves the store. The invigorating effect lasts, all in all, for about a half hour. But during that half hour, the shopkeeper feels more optimistic than he has in many, many years, and the feeling lingers even after the gum's effects subside. But what other flavors did he receive? The delivery man brought 3 boxes, so what about the other 2? He opens the second box and pulls out a pack. Tastes like Mom used to make. Well, that's even more vague than the first one. But after the experience of the previous one, he's eager to discover exactly what that could mean. He unwraps a piece, studies its light brown color, and pops it into his mouth. As soon as he begins to chew, the flavor explodes on his tongue, taking him back once again to his childhood. Brown butter, sugar, chocolate chips, a hint of vanilla. It can't be. But it is. It's his mother's chocolate chip cookie recipe. How could the manufacturers have possibly recreated it so perfectly? The flavor passes quickly, and eager to confirm his experience and make sure it was real, he grabs another piece. This one tastes entirely different. Blueberry pancakes, like his mother used to make on Sunday mornings, dripping with syrup and melted butter. This is the most unusual chewing gum indeed. In all his years of selling candy, of tasting every unusual innovation or novelty product, he never dreamed it could be like this. Now for the third package. He slices the box open and finds black packages inside, emblazoned with eerie red writing. The text read, "Tastes like your worst nightmare." The shopkeeper feels a chill run down his spine, his hands shaking with nerves as he unwraps a piece of the pitch-black gum. But he can't stop himself. He has to satisfy his curiosity to discover what nightmares taste like. He pops the piece into his mouth and begins to chew. At first, he's almost disappointed. It doesn't taste like much of anything. Vaguely sweet, almost creamy, like finishing a glass of warm milk before bed. But as he chews, the shop around him begins to blur and warp, lights dimming until he is standing in the dark. The hairs on his arms stand to attention, and he becomes overwhelmed with the sensation of eyes on his back. Something's here, and it's watching him. He spins around and finds nothing there. But wait, what's that? Out of the corner of his eye, a shadow darting just out of sight into the storage room in the back. Against his will, his feet begin to carry the man toward that room, following the shadow. But the door to the storeroom is shut. It wasn't shut before. Something closed it when it darted inside, and it's in there now, waiting for him. His stomach turns as his hand reaches for the doorknob, turning it inch by inch. His nerves are screaming at him to stop, to turn and run. But as if trapped in a nightmare, his body refuses to obey him. It pushes the door open with a pronounced creak, and there, in the darkness, 2 glowing red eyes gaze out at him. The shopkeeper's heart leaps into his throat, and in a moment of clarity, he spits out the gum. All at once, the glowing eyes are gone. The lights have come back on, and the nightmare is over. He resolves not to stock that particular flavor in the shop, and tucks the box away in the back of that same storage room. Before long, his 2 new nostalgic flavors of magic chewing gum draw the attention of the SCP Foundation, who, after paying the man enough money to keep the shop open for the foreseeable future, call it a finder's fee, take the gum samples into custody and give them the classification SCP-1200. The designation SCP-1200 applies to all instances of chewing gum distributed under the brand Tastes Like Chewing Gum. Packages of this gum have been spotted in various grocery and convenience stores around the United States, appearing seemingly at random. Each pack of gum features a logo identifying the manufacturer as simply the factory. Whenever a human subject masticates or chews a piece of the gum, a certain anomalous effect will occur. This effect varies depending on the color and flavor of the given gum. There have currently been 83 flavors of SCP-1200 identified and cataloged. Swallowing this gum does not appear to produce any additional anomalous effects. Also, contrary to what certain popular misinformation might say, this gum, or any gum in fact, does not stay in the digestive tract for 7 years. The 83 flavors on file can be found in SCP-1200-EKV, which was unfortunately impossible for me to obtain during my research into SCP-1200. The official file does, however, include a partial list of some of these flavors. Though I would have preferred to conduct a more comprehensive review, this at least provides a bit of valuable additional context for the anomalous product. So let's review some of the most memorable SCP-1200 flavors and their recorded effects on human test subjects. SCP-1200-12 is a lime green colored gum flavor, which is, funnily enough, called Tastes Like Lemons. When a human subject chews this flavor, their gustatory perception is altered for the next 28 hours. No matter what they eat during that time frame, it will taste like lemons. A bit odd, but not harmful, unless the subject just really hates the taste of lemon. After the 28-hour period is up, all food reverts to its original taste. SCP-1200-15 is a bright yellow flavor, tastes like sunshine. When a test subject eats this flavor, they will become luminescent, emitting over 40,000 lux of white light. This effect, while disconcerting to witness, does not do any harm to the subject exhibiting it. The subject's luminescence lasts for approximately 20 minutes at full intensity, and then the light begins to dim gradually until it disappears completely after 4 more minutes. You may have noticed that this flavor is a great deal more abstract than Tastes Like Lemons. Well, they only get more unusual from here. The next flavor detailed in the file for SCP-1200 is SCP-1200-29, Tastes Like Rubik's Cube. Like the cube for which it's named, this flavor is multicolored, checkered in white, orange, green, red, yellow, and blue. When a subject eats this flavor, their body takes on a unique property for the next 216 minutes. During this window of time, the subject will be able to rearrange segments of their body, both internal and external, at will. This has no impact on the subject's health or comfort, even when rearranging bones, muscles, and vital organs. However, these alterations cause secondary changes within the body as it compensates for the movements. Unfortunately, this means that the first test subject who consumed this flavor during SCP Foundation trials was unable to return her body to its original orientation before the 216 minutes were up. She failed to solve the puzzle, and now her left and right hands are permanently swapped. The next flavor included in the file is SCP-1200-30, a dark blue gum that is described as tastes like those forgotten. What could that possibly mean? Well, it means that once a test subject has chewed this flavor, 6 corporeal humanoid entities will manifest in their vicinity. These entities do not appear to be sentient, and their only behavior is mimicking the actions and speech of the subject and any other humans in the area, such as guards and researchers. These entities linger for 6 days before disappearing, leaving a homogeneous liquid behind. Analysis of the liquid determined that it consisted of a mixture of organic materials, iron particles, and acrylic paint. SCP-1200-58 is a particularly curious flavor. This white gum tastes like afterlife. When the subject chews it, a polyhedral crystalline exoskeleton forms around them. Once it is formed, it will levitate 1.3 meters off of the ground. During the first trial, this object remained inert for a period of 62 days. When the 62 days were up, the exoskeleton broke apart, leaving the subject behind and completely unharmed. He was immediately interviewed about his experience inside the structure, and he described being transported to a green meadow, where he met his younger brother. This was especially curious considering that the subject does not have any recorded siblings, living or dead. Another notable aspect of this flavor is its effect's resemblance to SCP-1511, crystalline structures that transfer prisoners while showing them some manner of beautiful, false afterlife. The only other flavor included in the file is Tastes Like Moon's Shadow, a red gum that has been tested once on a female research subject. After she finished chewing the piece of gum, a series of incorporeal, translucent, leporine organisms began to emerge from the walls of the cell where the subject was being kept. During this entire process, the subject claimed to not see the entities, nor did she feel it when they approached her, reached her, and burrowed into her body. Video recordings of the incident were unable to capture these entities. 11 days after the experiment was conducted, the subject was found dead. Despite the lack of visible injuries, her cause of death was determined to be exsanguination. This is the only recorded fatality resulting from a sample of SCP-1200. There appears to be a link between this gum flavor and SCP-1284, though I have not yet been able to determine the nature of this link. On February 20th, 2003, the SCP Foundation was conducting an investigation completely unrelated to SCP-1200. The exact nature of this original investigation has been redacted from the file, but whatever it was, it's irrelevant to the subject at hand. It isn't the investigation, but what they discovered by complete accident that matters. Foundation operatives stumbled upon a secretive facility that was entirely dedicated to the production of tastes like those forgotten. When the Foundation entered the facility, they discovered an assembly line, as well as 28 anomalous entities dwelling inside. It would appear that these entities, referred to as SCP-1200-A, are part of the company's workforce. Instances of SCP-1200-A are animate humanoid entities whose physiology is composed primarily of wrought iron. They are also coated in several layers of paint, usually in a shade of white, pale blue, or yellow. These layers of paint are worn, faded, and flaking, and the metal beneath is beginning to rust. Whenever they were made, it was some time ago, and they have fallen into a state of disrepair. Each instance has no facial features on its head, and the only feature present is one large, circular opening, which seems to operate a bit like a mouth. In addition to discovering the facility and its anomalous workers, this discovery gave the Foundation some new insight into the production process for this particular flavor of tastes like chewing gum. The image that it painted was, well, troubling. When instances of SCP-1200-A are not contained, they will attempt to collect recently deceased human cadavers and transport them to the production facility. If they are permitted to do so, they will collect these bodies from freshly dug graves or even poorly guarded morgues and carry them back to the facility. There, an SCP-1200-A instance will take one of its chosen corpses and begin to regurgitate paint, biological matter, and small slags of iron into the body's mouth. I apologize for the stomach-turning imagery, but there is simply no pleasant way to describe this process. The instance will repeat this process over a period of several weeks until the body begins to liquefy under the influence of whatever matter the entity has pumped into it. The process only ceases when the body begins to liquefy, eventually leaving behind nothing but a thick, homogeneous liquid, which will suddenly disappear soon after. How it disappears and where it goes is unknown, but I can make an unpleasant guess. Chemical analysis of some of this liquid has identified it as the substance that makes up 80% of the sample of tastes like those forgotten. It would appear that this particular flavor of chewing gum and Soylent Green have a key ingredient in common: people. No other facilities have been discovered at this point, so it is uncertain whether the key ingredients in other gum flavors are quite as macabre. Following the discovery of this facility, the Foundation cross-referenced its communication archives for any potential mentions of the facility or facilities like it. This investigation uncovered a surprisingly relevant phone call hidden in the archives. The call was made on June 2nd, 1999, from a payphone about 2 kilometers from the facility discovered in 2003. The recording contains one single unidentified male voice, and a transcription of the call's contents is included.
Herrick, this is Davis. I'm all done with the psychopomps here. We redirected the output to the location you wanted. Weren't any problems there. The goo should start arriving to you shortly. About your other order, Morton spotted some nano-hives in Budapest. I'm heading out there tomorrow. They should do nicely for your task after some tinkering. Make sure there won't be any issues with my payment this time. If your contacts at the factory are unwilling, I can always find someone else. Call you in 2 weeks.
Any discovery and seizure of SCP-1200 instances must be performed by the FDA under CFR Title 21. Once the instances are in the possession of the FDA, these samples will be replaced with non-anomalous duplicates, and the originals are to be transferred to Foundation Site 197. SCP-1200-A instances do not require food or oxygen to survive, and therefore are to be kept contained in individual reinforced containers, which are stored in the I-TL-1 wing of Site 197. 2 days after the SCP-1200-A base facility was dismantled, the SCP Foundation received a series of packages. These packages were delivered to several facilities, and all contained the same thing: a new, previously undocumented flavor of gum. This gum was completely colorless, and the packaging read, "Tastes like normalcy." Test subjects who chewed the gum said that it had no noticeable flavor at all, and no anomalous effects occurred. It seems that the creators of Tastes Like Chewing Gum took notice of the Foundation's investigation and decided to create a custom flavor, or lack thereof, for the organization. The identity of the company's higher-ups, or the gum's creators, is still unknown. Unfortunately, the trail has gone cold for now. But don't lose hope. It's possible more facilities are out there, waiting to be discovered. Keep that dream alive, investigators, and don't let me burst your bubble. Get it? Like bubblegum? Well, there's a reason I became a researcher and not a comedian. It's never a nice feeling waking up lying amongst shards of broken glass in the middle of the road. The dawn sky above the biker looks almost peaceful. It's as if nothing had gone wrong at all, as if everything is right in the world. But slowly, the throbbing pain washes into his helmeted head, and the sound of the traffic surrounding him rises in his ears. A sea of onlookers gathers around as the cars blast their horns. Through the cracked visor of his helmet, the biker can see concerned faces, people calling emergency services, and a few women crying. His paramedic bike is toppled on its side about 40 feet from him. There are long black tire marks running up to where it lies, smoking slightly on its side. With a groan, the biker sits himself up and shakes his head. Bad idea. Looking around, though, it seems he's the only one injured. His bike had gone into the front of a car at the junction. The occupants of the car stand by nervously, offering him whatever little assistance they can. But there's no time for that, the biker suddenly realizes. He looks down at his watch frantically. It's 12:03 p.m. There's not enough time. He rushes over to the bike as fast as he can and lifts it back upright. A couple of onlookers try to grab his arms, trying to sit down to rest, but he can't. There's no time. He has just 3 minutes to get to St. Mary's Hospital in central London. Right now, he's at the junction outside Baker Street Station. He can still make it on time if he gets on his bike and goes now. The biker swings his leg onto the bike and kicks it into life. He takes a deep gulp and looks over his shoulder at the box on the back of his bike. He can't risk opening it here. The damage may already be done. But if the heart is still alive in that box, it is the only chance that a 10-year-old boy has for a normal life. If he doesn't get to the hospital in the next 3 minutes, his life could be over. The school children stand in a circle, looking down at the dead bird with a morbid fascination.
Do you think it's alive? No way.
The boy in the middle of the group goes to pick up a stick. With an air of false confidence, he walks up to the bird and gives it a prod. It makes a squelching noise. The other kids all reel in shock, making retching noises and laughing about it. It's only when their teacher comes out to call them inside that the group disperses, leaving the animal carcass alone, sitting at the edge of the playground, outside the view of boring adults. Each passing day, the kids wander over to the bird's body. It's kind of the best biology lesson they've ever had as they watch the animal slowly decompose. At first, its body just shrinks, goes flat almost. The feathers start falling out, and it loses all of its color. Then it starts to get puffy. Different parts of its flesh bulge out in weird places, as if they're being inflated like a balloon animal at someone's birthday party. But then, the maggots come. There are only a couple of tiny white crawling wrigglers in the bird's body at first, but a couple of days after that, it's infested with them. The creepy crawlies wriggle all over the body. But as the boy looks down at the dead bird, he spots something very peculiar, something they haven't seen in a biology class before. There's a red maggot, wriggling and crawling in amongst the rest of the creepy crawlies. It squirms like the rest of them, but even over the course of the school day, it quickly grows larger than any of the others.
What do you think it is?
The boy stares at it.
It looks like a worm.
and a worm is exactly what it was. The next day, when the kids return, they see that the red maggot is now much larger than any of the others feasting on the bird. With a slightly translucent body, cherry red coloring, and small white speckles on its skin, it looks unlike anything they've ever seen before. Actually, not unlike anything they've ever seen before. It looks exactly like something that all the kids recognize very well. In fact, one of the kids has a bag of them right now that he's chewing on. A candied worm. The kids stare in curiosity, first at the bag of candy that their friend has in his hand, and then down at the worm, slowly eating its way through the decomposing bird. As far as their eyes can tell, the two things are exactly the same. Except, of course, that the one eating the bird seems to be alive. Kids being kids, the next thing that happened was sort of inevitable. One dares the boy to eat it. He almost retches in disgust. There's no way he's even touching it. And then, another one of the children throws down the poison chalice and dares him. The boy stands there nervously. He knows that he's not allowed to eat worms. That had been a lesson ingrained in him from a very young age. But his mother isn't here right now, and this thing doesn't look like any kind of worm that he's seen before. It almost looks a bit tasty. In exchange for eating the worm, another one of the children promises he'll give him 5 English pounds. The kids around the circle gasp. That's a lot of money. None of them have even got 2 pounds on them, let alone 5. Think of all the sweets you could buy with that kind of money. But the boy is adamant. He puffs his chest out, he stands up tall, and he nods firmly. 5 pounds, or he wouldn't do it. After some intense schoolyard debate, the deal is sealed. As the boy lies in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and grumbling, he knows that he's not happy about what his friends have done to him today. He's going to get them back for this. Only he's getting a bit of a tummy ache. Getting is the wrong word. He's had a tummy ache for most of the evening. What he's experiencing now is heartburn. It feels as if something is crawling in his chest. The boy just ignores it. It's probably just his worries about the worm inside of him. He chewed it up pretty well. There's no way that it's still alive in him, surely. His uneasy sleep is punctuated by rotten dreams. Dreams in which he finds himself lying on the floor and his playground lying on the ground at school, unable to move as people gather around him to poke him with a stick. He feels his skin covered with maggots. They even crawl across the surface of his eyes. In his chest, there's a searing pain. The boy wakes with a start as he feels his heart pounding, thudding against his ribs. It's agonizing. Adrenaline courses through him as he sweats off his face. Crying out for his mom, the boy lies there in bed, feeling the heart attacking his system. When you decide to become a surgeon, you have to accept that you're not going to get very much sleep most nights. In fact, it's more than that. You have to not only accept that you won't get much sleep most nights, but you also have to be at your absolute best when you've had no sleep and it's the middle of the night. With over 40 years under his belt, the surgeon doesn't need coffee anymore, even when the junior doctor offers it to him as he strides toward the operating theater. Instead, he asks them to fill him in on the situation. Who's his patient? What's going on? What needs to be done? The doctor accompanying him reads the notes in a calm but hurried voice. They haven't got much time on this one at all. At any moment, the boy's heart could give out. The surgeon asks what's wrong with the organ, and the doctor looks at his notes in apparent confusion. Apparently, over the course of the night, the boy has suffered a 72% reduction in the mass of his heart. The surgeon stops just on the other side of the door. He doesn't want to have this conversation in front of his whole team. He whispers to the doctor in a terse voice,
What kind of infection does this boy have that his heart has undergone that rapid of a deterioration? It's not an infection at all, sir. Well, sir, it's a worm.
The doctor holds out a sheet to him. The surgeon takes it from him. He looks down at the x-ray to see a scan of the boy's chest cavity. It doesn't look so bad. There's a hole in the heart for sure, but the surgeon has encountered worse in his career.
This was taken when the boy was first admitted.
The doctor hands the surgeon a second x-ray.
And this was taken just 1 hour later.
It is barely recognizable as a human heart. There seems to be a mass growing in the cavity that was left by the heart, and there, infecting all of the boy's organs, was the shape of a worm. The biker weaves his way through the traffic down on Marylebone Road, eyes darting frantically in all directions. He may have a concussion, and he may not be allowed to drive at all right now. In fact, he knows he definitely isn't, but he is under strict instructions. This heart needs to get to St. Mary's Hospital before it's too late. The bike careens around the corner and skids to a halt outside the emergency doors. An ambulance team in front of him is trying to help an old lady out of the back of their vehicle, but the biker doesn't have time for them. He grabs the organ box from the back of the bike and races into the building. It takes all of his remaining concentration to navigate through the maze of hospital corridors on his way to the operating theater. On a better day, he'd be able to do this with no problem, but with his head injury, he can see the lights starting to blur all around him. Ward 6, Ward 7, Ward 7A, Ward 7B. He runs as fast as his heavy boots will allow him, feeling that energy draining from his system. He can't look at his watch, he can't check the time, he just has to find this boy. Operating theater, there, right up ahead of him, just a couple of 100 feet. There's a doctor waiting outside the door who looks up at the sound of his footsteps. The biker rips his helmet off and holds out the box with the heart in it, panting heavily. It's the moment of truth. Is he too late? The doctor looks shell-shocked, not at the biker's arrival, but clearly at something else she's just seen. The man starts to explain, but runs out of words, and instead beckons the biker to follow him into the observation room. There, the two of them stand looking through the glass at the little boy lying on the operating table with the surgeon standing over him. There's something in the air. The biker sniffs, confused.
Can anyone else smell sugar?
Next time you open a packet of candied worms, take a second to look through the little creepy crawlies in the bag. Perhaps poke a couple of them, just to see if any of them are moving. You can never be too careful. If you had told the parents of that young boy on the night when their son woke up with heart palpitations, telling stories of eating a worm at school, that the only health concerns he would have going forward were mild diabetes and a slightly raised level of blood sugar, I'm sure they would have been thrilled to hear it. You see, SCP-839, commonly referred to within the Foundation as candied worms, is much scarier on the surface than it is underneath. Not only does this SCP resemble your usual candy worm, but its body is actually composed of sugar flavorings and colorings, roughly equivalent to what you would find in most convenience store candy aisles. Each instance even has a small raised bit of writing near the tail specifying which flavor it is. While the origins of these worms are yet to be determined, cases have sprung up across much of the Western world, with higher numbers reported in areas with higher levels of diabetes. There seems to be a parallel between high-sugar diets and the presence of SCP-839. Whether they are of man-made or other origins is yet to be determined. That is not to say that SCP-839 cannot survive outside of human populations. This SCP in the wild primarily feeds on decomposing organic matter and is capable of sustaining itself on a purely vegetarian diet. However, when ingested into the human body, SCP-839 will target specific organs and burrow its way towards them. The organ in question depends on which color candied worm the SCP instance is. For example, the red cherry-flavored candied worms will burrow towards the heart and consume that, while the blue raspberry ones will instead feed on the human's kidney. One would expect the health consequences of this feeding to be severe. However, as the SCP feeds, it will also change its own shape and chemical composition until the worm itself becomes a substitute organ for the one that it is consuming. However, this substitute organ is not a perfect replacement, as other health consequences are derived from its presence. For example, the green apple-flavored SCP-839-3 targets the eye and replaces it with a jelly-green version of the human eye. While this eye is mostly capable of sight, subjects have reported mild hallucinations and blurriness of vision, as well as a greenish tint to how they see the world. Fortunately for the Foundation, SCP-839 reproduces sexually, meaning that individual instances require a partner in order to have offspring. This has made containment of this SCP much more feasible. Though they are a relatively low-priority entity in the broader scope of the Foundation, there are no known cases as of yet of any SCP-839 infections leading to death or serious chronic illness. Therefore, any instances that are captured by the Foundation are sent to Storage Site 839-1, where they are kept in a glass housing and regularly fed a diet of plant matter each day. Here, their reproductive activity can be closely monitored and controlled based on what research is needed. Those infected with SCP-839 instances can continue to live long and healthy lives, with only minor health complications arising. Therefore, the Foundation is comfortable allowing a reasonable number of cases to go unexamined in the world. So, like I said, for next time you open up a bag of candied worms, maybe just give them a quick poke. You could be saving yourself a trip to the hospital and a lifetime dependence on insulin.
The boy screams as his body transforms. His bones warp and twist as feathers emerge from his pores, and his skull sharpens into a long, hard beak. He's in a living nightmare. And who could have guessed it all started with an innocent attempt to play hooky? It's an ordinary Monday morning, and all over town, children are waking up and reluctantly dragging themselves out of bed for school. Some are oversleeping, hitting the snooze on their alarms, and getting a bit of extra shut-eye before their exhausted parents notice, wake them up, and rush to get them to school before the first morning bell. In one particular bedroom, a young boy is awake but still in bed, brainstorming as fast as he can. He is determined to skip school today however he can. He usually doesn't mind school very much, but today, all he can think about is the math test he didn't study for and the mean classmate who likes to knock his books out of his hands. But he can't just ask to skip school for no reason. He has to come up with a plan. He runs to the bathroom, splashing hot water in his face to give him a flushed appearance and a warm forehead. Then he hops back into bed and begins to loudly cough and sniffle until his mother comes to check on him. He complains that he doesn't feel well enough to go to school, and, sure enough, when his mother feels his forehead, it is hot to the touch. She agrees to let him stay home from school for the day, provided he stays in bed and gets plenty of rest. He promises that he will, and she leaves to go to work. On her way to work, the boy's mother remembers that there isn't much for him to eat while he's home alone all day. At least, there isn't much that he would want to eat while he's sick. She decides that she can be a little bit late to work for the sake of her son's health, and pulls into a nearby grocery store. She rushes out of her car and into the store, making a beeline for the soup aisle. She reaches for her usual go-to brand of chicken noodle soup, but finds the shelf completely bare. That's right, it's flu season. Of course, the soup is sold out. Oh great, this is exactly what she needs. A sick kid at home, 1 can of chicken noodle soup left at the store, and the machine won't even scan it. She smacks the side of the machine in frustration, and the screen reads invalid code, transaction canceled. With a heavy sigh, she glances over her shoulder. No one is watching. She tried to pay for the can to do the right thing, but the machine wouldn't let her. So she grabs the can and runs out of the store before anyone can spot her. While his mother is out, the boy is at home raiding the pantry for snacks to sate his not at all sick appetite. He fills up on Oreos and toaster pastries, cheesy crackers, and chips. When he hears his mother's car pulling into the driveway, he quickly wipes the crumbs from his face and jumps back into bed, just in time for his mother to find him there, resting like he promised he would. She gives him a kiss on the forehead and tells him that she'll heat up some chicken noodle soup for him to eat. She's in a hurry to make it to work, though, so she'll need to leave it in the microwave for him. She pours the contents of the soup into a bowl, adds a bit of water, and pops the bowl into the microwave for a few minutes. She calls up to her son, letting him know that the soup will be ready when the microwave dings. Then she rushes out the door and heads to work for the day, confident that her son will be fine through her shift. If he happens to need anything, he can call her and let her know. The boy hears the microwave ding, but his stomach is too full from his rummage through the pantry for him to want any of the soup, in spite of its heavenly aroma. Instead, he creeps into the living room and sits down to play video games until his eyes start to hurt. As he boots up his gaming system, he thinks for a moment that he can hear a strange noise coming from the kitchen, a soft, clucking sound, like the chickens he saw on his grandparents' farm. But he quickly forgets about the sound as the screen lights up, and he disappears into the world of his favorite game. He plays for hours, until the grumbling of his stomach interrupts his concentration. He's suddenly very hungry, and remembers the soup his mother left in the microwave. It is certainly cold and unappealing by now, but he can just reheat it first. He punches the buttons on the microwave and waits for the soup to be ready. Again, he can hear strange noises coming from the microwave, but he doesn't think anything of it. The microwave dings, and he pulls out the bowl of soup, grabs a spoon, and digs in. A little while later, the boy's mother pulls into the driveway in a panic. She left work early when her phone rang with a call from her son. She answered, asking what was wrong, but he wouldn't answer her. All she could hear on the other end was rustling, heavy breathing, and some pained grunting. Fearing the worst, she drove back as fast as she could, running several red lights along the way. Now she fumbles with her keys as she unlocks the door, terrified of what she will find. She grips her phone in her other hand, thumb hovering over the buttons, ready to dial 911 if the situation calls for it. She pushes the front door open, calling her son's name. He doesn't answer, and her stomach drops. Suddenly, she hears the loud thud of something heavy being knocked to the ground. Something is terribly wrong here, and even though she might find her worst nightmare, she has to face whatever is waiting for her inside. She runs into the kitchen and finds it a mess. The bowl of soup is shattered on the floor, congealed, cold soup pooling on the tile.
The kitchen table is turned over on its side. The kitchen chairs are in disarray. But the strangest sight is the dozens of tiny, white, fluffy things on the floor, counters, and furniture. She picks one up for a closer look and finds herself even more confused than before. It's a feather. They're all feathers. She calls her son's name again, praying for a response. This time, she receives one, though not the one she hopes for. She hears the sound of shuffling footsteps up above, followed by a strangled sound like a scream caught in someone's throat. She sprints up the stairs as fast as her legs can carry her, throwing open the door to her son's bedroom. There, she finds him. But this is not the bright-eyed boy that she left behind when she left for work. His arms are covered with a thick layer of white feathers, the same feathers that are beginning to poke through the skin of his face. The top of his head has elongated into a floppy comb of excess skin, the same sort of excess skin that is wobbling below his chin. And his mouth, it doesn't look like a mouth anymore. It's pointed and hard, and his lips click together when he speaks, or rather, clucks. His bare feet are scaly and red, with claws protruding from his toes. He flaps his wings frantically, eyes wide and wild, clucking and running back and forth across the room. When he looks at her, she does not see recognition in his gaze. Her son, her beloved boy, has turned into a chicken. Unable to do anything else, the mother calls an ambulance. At first, the paramedics that arrive on the scene think the call was some sort of elaborate prank, but when they set eyes on the boy, they agree that something truly bizarre is going on. They speed to the hospital with the chicken boy in tow, but sadly are unable to save his life. The mother turns over the can of the mysterious soup to the authorities, who launch a formal investigation. Unfortunately, they are unable to trace the can to any store, nor are they able to verify the existence of the company name on its label. Employees of the grocery store where she found the can insist that they have never seen it in their lives. Several weeks after this incident occurred, the SCP Foundation conducted a raid on a New York office of Marshall, Carter, and Dark. For those of you unfamiliar with the organization, and that is most of the general population by design, Marshall, Carter, and Dark Ltd. is an extremely powerful multinational corporation founded by 3 individuals with those surnames, specializing in the acquisition and sale of anomalous items, entities, and experiences. To put it simply, they run the largest anomalous black market in the world and are the crime bosses of the paranormal world. During this particular raid, SCP Foundation operatives recovered 17 different unusual items. Among the items discovered was a shipping crate recently delivered by the Federal Postal Service from an invalid return address. This crate contained 103 cans of SCP-2057, as well as a copy of a letter written to one of the company's associates. So far, the letter has not been traced to an address. It reads, "Dear Cyrus, Maria has told me of the unfortunate circumstances that have befallen your children. I'd hoped to hear about the improvement of their condition soon. As their godfather, I am extremely distressed to hear this. Having experienced a child suffering from the measles myself, I know how terrifying it can be when it seems as if they are getting worse. Recently, we received a shipment of something that I hope can help your family. There is a crate in the storage area marked with Wondertainment, discontinued item. It will not be there long, as it goes to auction next week. I will leave a key under the photo of your family on your desk. Follow the instructions exactly. Do not, under any circumstances, do anything different than what is directed on the can. Destroy this message as soon as possible. I do not want any of this to come back on us. Be careful, my friend. Williams." SCP-2057 consists of 92 318-milliliter cans of condensed chicken noodle soup. Each can is covered with a brightly colored label depicting images of noodles, a cartoon chicken, and dancing vegetables. In addition to this inviting imagery, each label is emblazoned with the text, "Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids." Each can has a pull-top lid for easy opening and is printed with a set of nutrition facts, ingredients, and instructions for heating. The nutrition facts are as follows: calories, 95, fat, 3.17 grams, carbohydrates, 2.2 grams, protein, 13.48 grams, vitamin W, 2 grams, and mother's love, 10 grams. The SCP Foundation attempted to analyze the contents of the soup in order to compare it to the posted nutrition facts. The calories, fat, carbohydrates, and protein were found to be accurately reported. Vitamin W was present in the reported amount as well. though it was not a compound that the Foundation scientists had ever encountered before. Mother's love, as it is an intangible concept, was not able to be identified or measured in the analyzed soup samples. The ingredients are listed as ultralicious chicken stock, enriched Chinese egg noodles, finest cooked chicken breast, farm fresh carrots, crispy crunchy celery, sweet Vidalia onions, no paint thinner, fresh mountain spring water, vitamin W. Contains less than 2% of the following ingredients: a pinch of salt, a smidgen of chicken fat, sprinkle of spice extracted from rare plants, a dash of high-quality unicorn tears. The instructions for heating read, "Hey kids, feeling sick, icky, or downright yucky? Just pop open a can of Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids. Place contents of the can in a medium-sized soup pot. Add a can of water, stir, and heat. Watch as the fun begins. Eat hearty, and you'll feel better and ready to play with Dr. Wondertainment toys in no time." All of this is relatively straightforward, give or take a few unusual ingredients. Someone taking only a quick look might mistake a can of this soup for any other chicken noodle soup. However, it does have something that most ordinary canned soup does not: a warning label. Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids is intended to be eaten while it is hot to make you feel better in no time at all. Do not consume after it has become cold. Do not reheat. By purchasing from Dr. Wondertainment, you agree to not hold Dr. Wondertainment or any of Dr. Wondertainment's affiliates accountable for injuries or damages incurred by your product. Thank you for purchasing from Dr. Wondertainment. So what exactly is in a can of Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids? Well, when the SCP Foundation first opened a can to take a look, they found that it was filled with condensed chicken broth and a mass of egg noodles shaped like an egg. When water was added and the contents of the can were heated to a temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, the noodle-based egg hatched. Inside was a small domesticated chicken made up of egg noodles, carrot, celery, onion, and cooked chicken breast. For simplicity's sake, this chicken noodle soup chicken is referred to as SCP-2057-1. As the Foundation researchers continued to heat the broth to a higher temperature, SCP-2057-1 began to move around, make audible chirping sounds, and eat the broth. As it ate, it grew larger and larger until it reached a mass of 85 grams and resembled a miniature adult chicken. At a temperature between 35 and 70 degrees Celsius, SCP-2057-1 behaved much like an ordinary chicken. It continued to behave normally even as it was consumed or cut apart, apparently feeling no pain or awareness of its situation. Dissection of SCP-2057-1 revealed that its insides were made up of soup ingredients, including celery and onion bones, cooked chicken breast muscles, carrot beak and legs, and chicken broth blood. When SCP-2057-1's temperature dropped below 35 degrees Celsius, it stopped moving and collapsed into the soup. At a temperature below 20 degrees Celsius, it became congealed and unappetizing. With these observations completed, the Foundation then attempted to measure the effects of this unusual chicken soup on a person that ingested it. When test subjects were fed samples of the soup at a temperature between 35 and 70 degrees Celsius, they had a very positive experience. The soup's taste was described as excellent, delicious, and homey. Though the meal caused a bit of psychological distress due to the soup chicken's realistic appearance and behavior, it improved every test subject's physical well-being. This eventually applied to test subjects with a case of influenza, measles, or the common cold. Following consumption of SCP-2057, each subject with a diagnosed illness of this kind reported immediate relief from their symptoms, including fever, aches and pains, cough, and congestion. With this positive, if a bit disturbing, effect documented, the Foundation next set out to determine what would happen if they let the soup get cold before it was eaten. Test subjects served this version of the soup had a far worse experience, describing the taste of their meal as bland, disgusting, and repulsive. 67% of the test subjects experienced cramps, chills, and diarrhea following their consumption of the soup, and 62% found themselves making involuntary clucking noises, as well as experiencing a strong aversion to poultry products. Again, several test subjects were deliberately selected based on their cases of influenza, measles, and the common cold. These test subjects immediately began to develop troubling symptoms, including the growth of pin feathers on their forearms, loosened excess skin on their heads and under their chins, a change in their ability to walk normally, and distressing hallucinations of being hung upside down by the ankles. Following these 2 rounds of testing, the research team decided to see why exactly the warning label advised against reheating the soup. D-Class 45782 was selected as the test subject for this particular experiment, and was instructed to reheat a bowl of cooled SCP-2057-1 in a microwave on high for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Then, he was to consume the reheated soup and report his experience to a camera placed in the room with him. As instructed, D45782 microwaved the bowl of soup. As it heated in the microwave, it emitted unintelligible vocalizations in a deep voice. After removing the bowl from the microwave, D45782 noted that it was gelatinous-looking, with blackened burnt bits around the edges. He took 3 bites of the disgusting, hot and cold at the same time mixture before spitting it out onto the floor and refusing to eat another bite. 15 minutes after tasting the reheated soup, D45872 began to exhibit significant distress, clucking angrily into the camera. 5 minutes later, D45872 became more difficult to understand, clucks and other chicken-like vocalizations making up most of his attempted speech. He began scratching vigorously at his arms to the point of drawing blood. Loose skin could be seen gathering on the top of his head and under his neck. 6 minutes later, D45872 had lost the ability to speak. Large white pin feathers had sprouted from his arms, covering the skin, and smaller white feathers were beginning to sprout from his face. After 16 more minutes passed, D45872 began attacking other objects in the room, attempting to destroy the microwave, knocking the bowl of soup to the floor, and flipping over a table and chair. He had grown feathers over 67% of his skin, and his face had begun to change drastically. His nasal area was elongated and hardened, joining with his lower jaw in an appendage resembling a bird's beak. His upper lip had disappeared into his nasal cavity. Only 5 minutes later, D45872 suddenly stopped moving and collapsed to the floor, dead. Following D45872's death, an autopsy was performed. These were the findings. Autopsy revealed D45782's cause of death was due to extreme and sudden physical change of internal organs, resulting in shock and cardiac arrest. 93% of the subject's skin was covered in feathers. Physical changes in the face resulted in a beak-like alteration of the nose and mouth. Loose skin under the neck and on the top of the head resemble a wattle and comb. Subject's lower legs were found to be covered in thick, scaly skin, with the toes of the subject's feet ending in small, rounded claws. The subject and instance of SCP-2057-1 were incinerated after testing and autopsy. Whenever not being used for approved experimentation, all cans of SCP-2057 must be stored in a standard, large-volume storage locker in Containment Area 27 and kept at a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. Because SCP-2057 is in limited supply, all experiments must first be approved by at least 2 personnel with 2-1103 clearance, as well as receiving the go-ahead from Dr. Applegate. There are still 41 cans of Dr. Wondertainment's chicken soup unaccounted for, and the Foundation has been unable to track them down so far. Who knows where they ended up? Maybe at another office of Marshall Carter and Dark. Or maybe, just maybe, one made its way onto the shelves at your local grocery store. Best to be careful out there. When you're feeling sick, hungry, or in need of a little pick-me-up, there's nothing quite like a steaming hot bowl of chicken noodle soup. Just make sure to read the label carefully and always follow the printed instructions. If you ignore them, you might just find that your chickens have come home to roost. After all, as the saying goes, you are what you eat. A man opens his mouth to bite a hot dog and suddenly freezes. His eyes widen, and the hot dog drops from his hand, falling to the ground. Ahead, a stampede of people is running toward him, screaming, crying out for help. Behind them, a man walks at an ordinary, casual pace, but something is off. His eyes have a glazed, unfocused look to them, and he keeps shoveling random items into his open mouth, swallowing them down. He eats a clipboard and pen, a discarded shoe, and as the first man watches in horror, the very hungry man grabs the ankle of a fallen member of the crowd and pulls him into his mouth, devouring him. The first man turns to run for his life, only to be knocked to the ground by the rest of the crowd, trying to escape. He struggles to climb back to his feet, and a hand reaches out to take his. When he makes it to his feet, he looks up and sees the hungry man pulling him in, mouth stretching open wide. The sky is a perfect, cloudless blue. The air is warm from the unbroken sunlight, but cooled to the perfect temperature by a gentle breeze. and there is a sense of electricity, excitement, and competition in the air. Throngs of people have gathered together in a makeshift arena, piled into plastic chairs and swarming around concession stands, all training their eyes on the arena's center. What are they here for? Some sort of Olympic Games? A baseball tournament? A horse race? No, it's something greater, something meatier. It is the annual Midsummer Hot Dog Eating Contest, and locals and tourists alike are coming together to see just who can cram the most pork or beef hot dogs and buns down their gullets in front of a roaring crowd. The announcer makes his way to the front of the arena, standing with his arms wide in front of the long table behind him. As he calls out the names of this year's contestants, they file in, each taking his place behind the table. There is the previous year's champion, a burly man with a bushy beard and twinkling eyes, and there is this year's surprise competitor, a skinny 19-year-old college student with a hungry grin. Then there are the lesser-known contestants, a local father who signed up after making a joke with his daughter, an uncle who scrawled his name on the sign-up sheet after a few too many drinks, a recently retired man checking off another item on his golden years bucket list. All have come to the event today with full hearts and empty stomachs, ready to see who the year's victor will be. The announcer riles up the crowd, encouraging them to cheer as loudly as possible to spur on their chosen competitor. All the while, staff are carrying out trays piled high with hot dogs, more hot dogs than most people see in a year, except for the people who just really, really love hot dogs. Each contestant receives a tray of hot dogs, a bucket of water, and an additional empty bucket, just in case, well, you get the idea. With the supplies and competitors all in place, it is time to begin the countdown. The announcer holds up his favorite air horn and calls out,
3, 2, 1, eat!
At the sound of the air horn's blast, the men leap into action, seizing hot dogs from plates and each engaging in their unique competitive eating technique. The previous year's champion employs the method of famous hot dog eating champion Joey Chestnut, dunking his entire hot dog sloppily into his water, then swallowing it as quickly as possible. The new challenger, on the other hand, employs the Solomon method, named for King Solomon. Much like the fabled king suggested doing with a stolen infant, eaters using the Solomon method break the focus of their feasting in half before polishing it off. One of the more casual competitors attempts a divide-and-conquer technique, eating first the dog itself and then the bun. Others employ no specific technique at all, attempting to devour the stack of hot dogs before them, using the same classic eating style they might employ at a family barbecue. This is a grave mistake. One by one, the less prepared competitors drop out, spitting into their buckets, wiping meat sweats from their foreheads, waddling out of the arena while groaning and holding their aching stomachs. Soon, only the two frontrunners remain. But what's this? A challenger approaches. An unassuming black man, clad in a shirt and dress pants, rushes into the arena, his face a mask of single-minded determination, and begins seizing the discarded hot dogs off the table, gobbling them up as fast as he can. The announcer and the rest of the audience watch in stunned disbelief. This is unprecedented, and as exciting as it is, definitely against the rules. This man is not a registered competitor, and he certainly can't join the contest in the champion stretch. Unsure of what else to do, the announcer beckons to the staff on the sidelines, ushering them back toward the table to clear the food and escort this surprise drop-in out of the arena. The audience watches with rapt attention as the staff members attempt to remove the stranger from his place at the table. He shakes his head violently, refusing to go, and snatches the hot dogs away from them, even as they try to clear the trays away. All the while, the remaining competitors standing are attempting to stay the course and finish strong in spite of the interruption. The new, younger man collapses, slumping down onto the table in a hot dog-induced stupor. He has tapped out. The victor is the previous year's champion, with a staggering ultimate tally of 38 hot dogs. As 4 staff members work together to wrestle the stranger out of the arena, the champion steps forward to receive his trophy. The crowd roars as he holds up his arms, grinning ear to ear and basking in yet another win. The announcer can still see the staff struggling with the stranger out of the corner of his eye, but this crowd wants to see their champion crowned, and the show must go on. So he grabs the Hot Dog King sash, the crown made from gold-plated, hot dogs, and even the massive gold trophy. He crowns the winner, placing the sash over his shoulders. Then, as the music swells triumphantly, courtesy of the local high school marching band, the announcer holds up the trophy, sunlight glinting off its shiny surface. It represents so many things: achievement, celebration, the ability to eat just so much meat and not get sick, and now it is time for it to be awarded to the man who earned it.
The announcer stretches his arms, handing over the trophy to the contest winner, when all of a sudden, another hand grabs hold of its handle, ripping it from the announcer's grasp. The stranger has returned, somehow freeing himself from the multiple security guards who escorted him away, and he has taken the trophy for himself. But he isn't just attempting to crown himself the hot dog king. No, this is not a simple coup-de hot dog. He lifts the trophy up over his head, opening his mouth as wide as it will go, and tears the metal in half with a horrible screeching sound, shoving the pieces into his mouth, chewing and swallowing. By the time the announcer and the champion recover from their shock enough to move again, the trophy is completely gone, vanished into the stranger's belly. After a day of seemingly impossible feats of feasting, the sight of this strange man consuming a truly impossible meal of metal is just too much for the already anxious crowd to take. The arena erupts into absolute chaos as people spill out of their seats en masse, fleeing the area. The champion, however, does not turn and run. He feels robbed of his victory. Though it may have occurred in an utterly bizarre fashion, he won't stand for this kind of disrespect. He has trained all year for this moment, only to watch his trophy be eaten right in front of him. He marches right up to the stranger and pokes him in the chest, demanding to know who he thinks he is. What gives him the right to crash the hot dog eating contest, interrupt the proceedings, and upstage his victory by chowing down on the trophy? The man doesn't answer him, so the champion continues to berate him, wagging his finger in his face. The stranger's eyes follow the finger, and slowly he opens his mouth. There is a sudden chomp, and the champion screams, holding his hand to his chest, using his shirt to stem the bleeding. He turns to run with the rest of the crowd, but it's too late. The stranger's hand clamps down on his shoulder, holding him in place with a surprising strength. The only thing he sees before his life is snuffed out is the stranger's wide-open mouth, before everything goes dark with another sickening chomp. All the while, the crowd's terror rises to a fever pitch at the horrible sight. They trample each other as they scramble to vacate the area, shoving strangers and loved ones alike out of the way in a bid to escape this mysterious equal-opportunity omnivore with an appetite for far more than just hot dogs. Some manage to escape, running far enough from the arena that they can stop to catch their breaths and glance back at the ones who were not so lucky. Those who tripped and fell in the madness, who had the wind knocked out of them by an elbow to the gut from one of their neighbors, those with weak ankles or who hadn't tied their shoes carefully enough. All of these poor, unfortunate souls are next on the menu for the stranger, who devours them one by one, rarely even stopping to chew. As one surviving woman watching from a distance pulls out her phone to call 911, she can't escape noticing the parallels to the contest itself, the way the stranger eats with a singular focus on consuming as much as possible. There's no pause to enjoy the meal, but there is no sadism or malice in the act either, just the sheer, undeniable drive to keep eating. The woman's call to the police is one of the strangest moments of her life and utterly baffles the local police department. "Ma'am, please calm down," one officer repeats again and again. "What do you mean there's a man eating people?" "I mean exactly what I said," she shouts. "A man showed up at the hot dog contest and started eating people. Please, you have to do something." "I think this is above our pay grade, miss," another officer chimes in. "You think we should call, the first officer trails off. Who? The woman demands, but the line goes dead before she can ask another question. The police are clearly no help, and she isn't about to stick around and see just how big this stranger's appetite is. She tried to save the others, but now she needs to save herself. She runs all the way home without another glance back. Meanwhile, the local police did make that mysterious call, and an SCP Foundation mobile task force is currently en route to the scene. By the time they arrive, the park is a ghost town, with nothing but the blood-stained grass and abandoned arena to suggest that something horrible ever happened here at all. But these aren't some bumbling local police officers who have no idea what to do with a man-eating anomaly. This team has seen enough bizarre sights to fill a lifetime, and another lifetime after that. They spy a trail of sticky red footprints leading away from the arena. At first, they assume that the substance is blood, but a closer examination reveals that it is, in fact, ketchup. They track the savory footprints away from the scene of the day's unsavory events, following them to a nearby warehouse. Judging from the scattered wooden beams, rustling metal, and boarded-up windows, this place has been abandoned for some time. The perfect place for an anomaly to hide away. If they weren't certain, the sound of someone inside biting through sheets of metal is plenty of indication that this is the right place. With no time to waste, they break down the door of the warehouse, weapons drawn and ready. They follow the sound of the chewing, splitting up to apprehend the subject from all available directions.
The shriek of tearing metal echoes through the building, bouncing off the walls and creating a cacophony that is difficult to track. They do their best to follow the sound, but quickly veer off in separate directions in an attempt to cover as much ground as possible. One operative confronts the stranger just as he is reaching for another piece of metal. He watches as the man takes a massive bite out of the steel, a bite that should have shattered his teeth and broken his jaw. Instead, a cartoonish bite mark is taken out of the metal. He approaches the stranger, who, upon locking eyes with him, begins to shake his head, still chewing. The MTF operative ignores this visual cue, approaching the man and attempting to physically restrain him. This, like the confrontation with the champion before, is cut off with a fateful chomp, and the operative screams ringing out through the warehouse, alerting his teammates to his unfortunate fate. The screams suddenly go silent, and another MTF operative stops cold, listening as the sound of chewing draws nearer and nearer. He spins around to face the presence behind him and spots the stranger standing there. The otherwise ordinary man is polishing off the tip of a steel beam, grimacing as he swallows it. The operative lifts his weapon, pointing it at the subject. The operative tells him to stand down and come quietly. The hungry man pleads wide-eyed for the operative to turn and run while he still can. He takes small, reluctant steps toward the operative, muttering that he can't stop. The operative brandishes his weapon again, barking another order for the man to stop. Before he can make another move, the stranger snatches the weapon out of his hand, opens his mouth, and swallows it. He winces as he does, but does not stop until the weapon is completely devoured. All at once, he lets out a loud belch, his knees buckle, and he slumps to the ground. He rubs his stomach, wipes his brow, and sighs heavily. "I'm so sorry about that. I was just so hungry I couldn't help it." The man shakes his head sadly. "I hope you can get a new weapon. And I'm sorry about your friend, too." "You said you couldn't help it. Why'd you stop?" The stranger shrugs, sighs again, and simply says, "Well, because I was full." After a bit of convincing, and a test confirming that the subject's strength and bite force has returned to ordinary human levels, the remaining mobile task force agreed to bring him into Foundation custody unharmed, though restrained. They pile into one of the SCP Foundation's trademark unmarked vans and set off toward the nearest Foundation site. About 1 hour into the trip, the subject begins to lament his growling stomach, asking if they could possibly stop somewhere for a bite to eat. Ordinarily, this is against protocol, but after what happened to their teammate, the task force members aren't taking any chances. They pull into a fast food drive-thru and permit the subject to order whatever he wants. They'll declare it as a business expense later. 5 burgers, 5 fries, 5 tacos, 5 pies, 5 cokes, 10 tater tots, 10 tenders, 5 shakes, 5 pancakes, 5 jalapeno poppers, and 5 baked potatoes later, the task force successfully reached the Foundation site with their newest subject, SCP-913. SCP-913 appears to be an average African-American man around middle age. Though his appearance is completely ordinary, his metabolism is unnaturally fast. He requires the recommended daily caloric intake for an average human being every 2 hours and has an unusually high internal temperature, though the specific number has been redacted from his official file. If he does not meet his calorie requirement for a given 2-hour period, he will enter a trance state in which he is unable to control himself. In this state, he will break down and ingest any solid matter in his line of sight. This includes matter that would ordinarily be indigestible, including wood, plastic, and metal. In this state, his appetite does not distinguish between living and non-living subjects. When he is in this hunger-driven state, he is aware of all his actions, but cannot stop himself, even when he eats dense materials that cause him extreme discomfort. If this state hits while the subject is sleeping, he will be forced awake. In addition to his anomalous appetite, SCP-913 can rend objects at an estimated force of 3,000 newtons and can bite objects with an estimated force of 5,000 newtons when eating them. Whenever he is not in his trance state, he cannot replicate this strength. An examination of SCP-913's liver tissue showed that it is capable of producing new enzymes in response to foreign material, allowing his body to digest matter that should be highly dangerous to consume. These enzymes metabolize the substrate at an efficiency of approximately 98%, detoxifying any drugs or toxins consumed by the subject during the hunger state or otherwise. This includes, but is not limited to, amnestics and anesthetics. When SCP-913 was first discovered, he was wearing a shirt and dress pants, both with the brand name Doctor's Orders sewn onto their tags. SCP-913 has no tattoos aside from one on his right calf, which reads, Mr. Hungry, from Little Misters by Dr. Wondertainment. Just in case you aren't aware, The Little Misters are a line of humanoid anomalies created by the mysterious Dr. Wondertainment Corporation, including the fish-headed Mr. Fish, the candy-coated Ms. Sweetie, and Mr. Life and Mr. Death, who is every bit as existentially upsetting as he sounds. The purpose of these creations is currently unknown, though, like many Dr. Wondertainment products, their existence invites endless speculation. SCP-913 must be contained in a customized humanoid containment cell lined with 1 meter thick carbon steel. 913 is to be provided standard furnishings for his containment cell, coinciding with the usual necessities for a comfortable humanoid dwelling. He may be given pre-recorded entertainment materials, such as concerts, films, and television shows upon request. The cell may be accessed via a reinforced carbon steel door. Once every 2 hours, SCP-913 is provided with 1 nutritional supplement as specified in Document 913-2. I attempted to locate a copy of 913-2 for further details on said nutritional supplement, but access to it appears to be limited to researchers assigned to SCP-913. While the subject is sleeping, nutrition is provided to SCP-913 via a central venous catheter that must be changed once every 3 months. These measures allow SCP-913 to receive the calories that he needs to avoid entering a hunger state, ensuring the safety of everyone on site as well as his own comfort. Like the rest of the Little Misters, SCP-913 presents a puzzle that may never be solved. I could spend my limited time on this Earth wondering why Dr. Wondertainment would create a being that seems to serve no purpose other than eating as much as possible, lest he unwillingly destroy the environment around him. But I believe that would be a waste of time. Why does Dr. Wondertainment do anything that they do? Why create a woman who can turn men into candy soldiers? Why create an ordinary man with a fish head, a tiny top hat, and a Boston accent? The personal motivations of Dr. Wondertainment, whether they are an individual or a massive conglomerate, are as inscrutable to me as the meaning of life itself, or the reasons why a person would want to eat more than 2 hot dogs in one sitting. A face screams in terrible agony. In the darkness, you can't quite make out the shape of its body, but it doesn't look human. It's large and square, almost boxy. 2 things you should know. This is a fate worse than death, and it isn't the only one. It's a busy but ordinary day in Hangzhou, China. People are rushing to and from work, going to school, going for walks, buying a hot meal and a cup of tea. But for one young police officer, this is a monumental day. He has been assigned the biggest case of his career, and he grips the stack of files with sweaty, trembling hands as he considers the weight of this moment. It isn't just one case, not really. It's actually 6. 6 separate missing person cases that he's beginning to suspect might be connected. Our detective wishes he could take a moment and transport himself away from these harrowing missing person cases and clear his head. But while he's unable to, we can. Thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Raid Shadow Legends, the hit mobile hero collection RPG played by over 80 million players across the world. And they've got some huge news for both new and returning players, the recently added Live Arena. To tell us about it, I've invited a fellow academic to join us today.
Professor Death Knight here with a lesson about Live Arena, the new PvP mode where you can fight against other players in real time. Sounds terrifying? Well, so's going to the dentist. You should still do it. Live Arena has a draft feature where you can pick and ban champions to fight for you. Teamwork. When you win matches, you'll get Live Arena crests towards unlocking special area bonuses, or so I hear. I'm too afraid to try any of this out. All right, class. Any questions?
Yes, Dr. Bob here. What's your personal strategy for Live Arena?
Well, everyone thinks I'll go in fighting, but nobody expects my charm. My best strength is the gift of gab. So when they try to attack, I'll just be like, nice weather we're having, eh? Nobody'll see it coming.
That doesn't sound like a very effective strategy.
Do not pick me for Live Arena. Seriously, don't. I'm too young to be bone meal.
Well, thank you for your...
Class dismissed! Do we have a bell? Oh, we should totally get a bell.
Class definitely not dismissed, but there's a bunch of brand new content in Raid Shadow Legends related to the animated limited series Call of the Arbiter, including a free legendary champion, the mighty orc warlord Artak. All you have to do to get him is log into Raid for 7 days between now and July 24th. Easy. New players, use my link or scan the QR code right here and get a free starter pack with this cool in-game loot. So just hit my link in the description, and I'll see you on the battlefield. And now, back to the case at hand. The detective was beginning to suspect that the 6 separate missing person cases might be connected. At first glance, they seem unrelated. The victims have very little in common, except one thing. They all worked at the same office. An office that closed 1 month ago, a casualty of international corporate downsizing. No one from his police department has bothered to look into this angle, assuming that it will lead back to more dead leads, but the young officer can't shake the feeling that there is important information waiting for him in that abandoned office building. So, after finishing up his lunch and dabbing the nervous sweat from his brow with a handkerchief from his pocket, he sets off toward the old office building in hopes of cracking the case wide open. As he makes the trip, he considers some other possible theories. Maybe the missing employees skipped town, overwhelmed and depressed from their unexpected job loss. But would they really let their families worry like this? Some of them have wives, husbands, children, all of whom would notice their absence and assume the worst. No, this isn't a simple case of a group of colleagues all vanishing to blow off steam in another city somewhere. Something bad happened. He can just feel it. Maybe they uncovered corporate secrets and someone decided to silence them before they could blow the whistle. But then again, what sort of secrets would be worth killing for at a printer company? It feels worthless trying to guess, trying to fill in the gaps in his knowledge with wild speculation. The only way to find out was to examine the building for himself and see if he can find any clues at all that lead him to the whereabouts of the missing 6. When the young officer reaches the building, he finds the door padlocked shut. Luckily, he prepared for this and brought some industrial-strength bolt cutters that snapped the lock into pieces with very little effort. Why lock up the building like this? There can't be anything valuable left inside. To prevent squatters, most likely, he assures himself, brushing off the sense of dread creeping up his spine as he walks inside. As he crosses the threshold of the empty office, the first thing he notices is the smell. It reeks of sulfur and bleach, and a whiff of something electrical that stings the inside of his nostrils with each breath. New possibilities turn over in his mind. Perhaps some sort of deadly workplace accident claimed the lives of the missing when they came back in to collect their belongings and clear out the building. Before he can decide if that theory holds any water, his thoughts are interrupted by a piercing scream coming from a nearby room. The officer isn't alone here. There's someone in the building with him, and they sound like they're in trouble. The officer grabs the taser from his holster and runs toward the sound. He skids to a stop, nearly knocking over a water cooler when he reaches the source of the screaming. There's a man hanging from the wall, screaming over and over again. The officer can barely process what he's seeing. The man is covered in machinery, all whirring and clicking as it works. Next to him, a printer is printing sheet after sheet of paper, and all the while, the man screams. The officer recognizes the man's face from one of the files. This is one of the missing employees. He can't determine what is causing the man such distress, and he tries to ask the man what happened to him. The man just continues to scream, eyes wide open and wild, rolling around in their sockets, unfocused and unseeing. The officer grabs the man, attempting to remove him from the wall, but he won't budge. It's as if his body is wired into the wall itself, and the harder the officer tugs, the more it appears as if the man's flesh will begin to tear away. The officer stops, turning his attention to the machinery. Perhaps if he unplugs it, he'll be able to remove the man more easily. He starts with the printer, and as he reaches for its plug, he gets a closer look at the paper it continues to spit out. It doesn't look like any paper he's ever seen, and unable to help himself, he reaches out to touch it. It's warm, soft, pliable, and nauseatingly familiar. It isn't paper at all. It's skin. In that moment, all of the officer's training falls out of his mind, replaced with blind terror. He runs from the building as fast as he can, all the way back to the police station, where he tearfully informs his captain about what he found. This is no longer a police matter, his captain tells him. They need to escalate this to a specialized organization. The young officer is sent home, placed on psychiatric leave, and the next day, the SCP Foundation investigates the building it will come to refer to as SCP-2535. SCP-2535 is a former 2-story Hewlett-Packard branch office building in the Jiaoshan district of Hangzhou, China. The building's anomalous nature is characterized by the presence of a detailed network of electrical and biological components of unknown origins. The walls of the building's entire first story, are covered with 63,512 USB 2.0 standard A sockets, placed in a grid pattern made up of 20-centimeter semi-regular intervals. Each of these sockets is connected to wires running through the walls, but these are no ordinary wires. They consist of a woven mixture of copper strands and human optic nerve tissue, all wrapped in a layer of keratin. In spite of the inclusion of organic material in their structure, the wires have not shown any signs of decay or deterioration since the Foundation discovered SCP-2535. This curious, off-putting mix of the technological and the biological persists throughout the location, and only gets stranger as one moves deeper into the building. If one were to follow the path of these wires, going against their better judgment and the scream of their most primal instincts, they would find that the wires lead to a room on the building's second floor. The room is currently inaccessible, but is thought to have once been the server room. Whatever is blocking the door is large enough that it cannot be budged, and non-intrusive imaging has determined that it is some sort of biological mass. The inside of the former server room, like the wires that lead there, emits heat at a consistent temperature of 47.6 degrees Celsius. Foundation personnel who approached the room have reported a persistent smell of sulfur and ozone coming from inside, as well as the loud sound of a running printer. 317 of the USB socket and power outlets in SCP-2535 are connected to HP brand USB 2.0 compatible devices. Of these devices, 20 have displayed anomalous, potentially ectoentropic functions. But what exactly does that mean? Allow me to elaborate. Just remember, you asked for this. Don't blame me if you aren't able to stomach the details. There are 5 former employees of the Hewlett-Packard Hangzhou branch still located inside of SCP-2535. These employees are in an anomalous sort of status, requiring no sleep, food, or water, in spite of their continued, seemingly endless consciousness. Since the building's discovery in April of 2013, they have not changed in any way, or at least not in any visible way. All attempts to remove these former employees from their, let's call them predicaments, have proven unsuccessful. Allow me to discard any euphemism and explain just what exactly became of these unfortunate workers. First, there is Guo Pingping, the former branch manager. He can be found in the bathroom near the receptionist's desk on the first floor. Guo's head has been forced into the feed tray of a DP DeskJet 1112 printer, which is plugged into the wall. This is troubling for a number of reasons, one of which is that the internal dimensions of this particular DeskJet model's feed tray are not large enough to accommodate a human head, and its components are not strong enough to crush a human skull into a shape that would fit. Nonetheless, Guo's head is firmly lodged into the feed tray. One would assume this would have killed him, but his body continues to move, kicking and thrashing about as if he is in pain. The former assistant branch manager, James Gu Yonggun, is located in the employee pantry on the building's second floor. His body is attached to the wall in a vertical position, held there via 92 20-inch USB 2.0 M-M cables. 5 additional cables have been used to secure the actuating unit of an HP DeskJet 2540 all-in-one printer to Gu's lower jaw. The arm of the actuating unit is also attached to a single HP-10 original ink cartridge in the color black. This ink cartridge is attached into Gu's throat at a continuous rate of 1 stroke per second, and in defiance of the known properties of ordinary ink cartridges, has yet to run out of ink in the years since its discovery. Gu appears to be partially conscious, but is unable to communicate intelligibly when addressed. The former Human Resources Department head, Angel Lee Huimin, is still in her former office on the second floor, though she no longer performs the duties of her old position. She is still, in a sense, in human resources, or rather, is a human resource. I apologize. Sometimes I have to make a joke to cope with the dark subject matter at hand, but Angel's fate is no laughing matter. Like Gu, she is attached to the wall via a series of USB cables. There is an additional cable, one of unspecified length, inserted into her lower abdomen, which is slightly distended, as though filled with a foreign object. Though a proper analysis has not yet been conducted, the variety of sounds and motions originating from the area seem to indicate that there is a fully operational HP USB single-station thermal receipt printer lodged near her small intestine. As a consequence of this, a never-ending stream of thermal receipt paper is pouring from Angel's mouth at all times, causing her considerable pain and distress. Wang Liang, the former head of the IT department, is permanently placed near the water cooler on the first floor. Like the others, he's bound to the wall by several USB cables, 37 to be exact. There are 12 HP Scanjet 200 scanners pressed against his body, all switched on and running at all times. Next to him, an HP DeskJet 1112 printer is attached to the wall and constantly printing out sheets of something. A closer inspection reveals that it is not paper, but rather sheets of skin. He is conscious, but no successful interview with Wang has been conducted due to his nearly constant, wordless screams of agony. The fifth human subject found in SCP-2535 is Chen Yupeng, who once worked as a trainee technical writer. Now he spends his days in the branch manager's office on the second floor of the building. His body has been wedged into the paper tray and backup paper tray of an HP LaserJet Pro 500 multifunction printer, which has been plugged into the wall via a standard power cable and a 3 feet USB 2.0 M-M cable. His head sticks out of an aperture cut into the side of the printer. The printer itself functions normally, printing copies of the HP Standard Print Quality Diagnostic page and the HP LaserJet 500 Technical Repair Manual, alternating between the two. Since SCP-2535's discovery, it has not run out of either paper or ink. Chen himself is unconscious and shows signs of severe blood loss that, under ordinary circumstances, likely would have resulted in death by now. During a preliminary inspection of the building, one Foundation operative discovered a Canon Pixma E480 printer in the first-floor janitor's closet. This printer was dented and heavily corroded, most likely from the application of liquid bleach, and was also covered with human teeth marks. It has spent the most recent several years attempting to print a 91-page document, but has been unsuccessful due to an apparent jam in its paper tray and feed mechanism. The seams of the printer occasionally ooze human blood, which DNA testing has matched to Yan Xiaoxia, former creative consultant of the Hangzhou branch. SCP-2535 must be sealed away from the public under the guise of health and safety concerns. At least 2 agents are to be stationed in a nearby building at all times for the purposes of observation. Wherever possible, the inside of SCP-2535 must be soundproofed. All material generated by the building's anomalies must be collected and disposed of on a daily basis. So far, these containment measures have been sufficient to keep civilians away from SCP-2535. As far as the friends and family of the missing employees know, their loved ones were never found. It's better that they think of them as lost or dead, rather than learn what truly became of them. As I was poring over the file for SCP-2535, something curious caught my attention. This is not the only anomaly cataloged by the SCP Foundation concerning a branch of the Hewlett-Packard Corporation. I considered leaving well enough alone, but I've never been particularly good at that. When another path presents itself to me, no matter how dark or foreboding it may seem, I cannot resist the urge to see where it will lead. In this case, the path led me to SCP-2211. SCP-2211 was a collection of 4 anomalies discovered in the Shanghai offices of Hewlett-Packard. Notice that I said was rather than is. More on that later. First, allow me to describe the nature of each anomaly. SCP-2211-1 is a 932-megabyte video file titled simply longsmile.wmv. When played, the video depicts a pair of lips on the right edge of the screen. The lips hold a closed-mouth smile for a moment, then open to reveal teeth. At this point in the video, the camera pans to the right, revealing more and more teeth, seemingly forever. Though the length of the video file is listed as 55 seconds, testing revealed that the file will continue to play, revealing endless, maddening rows of teeth for more than 150 straight hours. It will possibly run even longer than that, but testing was through before that could be seen. The video has no audio track. When longsmile.wmv is played for longer than 59 minutes and 20 seconds, the device used to play it will begin to secrete a small amount of human saliva. A sample of saliva was collected for DNA testing, but the results were inconclusive and did not match any known human being on record. SCP-2211-2 is a 2.0 megabyte audio file entitled EYEE(79.WAV). Each playthrough of the audio file is different, but tends to contain bursts of modulated static that go on for 2 to 10 seconds before being cut off for around 0.3 seconds of silence at a time. Like Longsmile, this file can play for a seemingly infinite amount of time, in spite of its listed length of 3 minutes and 3 seconds. When SCP-2211-2 is played for longer than 59 minutes and 20 seconds, the device will begin to secrete a clear fluid, identified as a mixture of water and sodium chloride, amino acids, glutathione, ascorbic acid, and human collagen fibers. Essentially, the device will begin to leak human tears. SCP-2211-3 is a 599 kilobyte file titled r.exe. When this file is run on a computer, it uses up a great deal of memory, causing the device to overheat and its built-in fans to speed up. In spite of the overheating and any damage it might cause, the computer will continue to run until disconnected from its power source. When the file is run for longer than 59 minutes and 20 seconds, air coming through the built-in fans will begin to emit a strong smell of earwax, though no physical traces of earwax have been found. SCP-2211-4 is a USB adapter-powered coffee reheater. When it is plugged into the USB port of a computer, any liquid placed into the container will be heated to approximately 65 degrees Celsius and will also transform into human mucus at a rate of 1 milliliter per minute. This effect is the same whether or not the computer is on. DNA analysis of the mucus revealed that it is a match with the saliva produced by SCP-2211-1. All of this would have been bizarre enough, a series of files and devices that produce human biological material and are seemingly all connected, but something else happened. All instances of SCP-2211 were kept in a pair of containment lockers. However, on June 10, 2014, this containment was breached. I have included a surveillance log transcript that captured the incident. It occurred as follows. Sound of banging metal detected near second floor of Wing B. Door of small item containment locker DAD-2838 is heavily deformed outwards and has experienced a heavy impact from its inside. The sound of banging metal persists for the next 3 minutes as the door of containment locker DAD-2838 begins to burst outwards. Security teams are deployed to cordon off the area and manage the situation. Containment locker DAD-2838 is fully breached from the inside when a segmented humanoid arm emerges, extending to reveal numerous joints along its length. Security teams begin opening fire on the arm to little effect. While the video feed shows that the arm terminates in a 7-fingered hand, personnel present on the scene reported a number of fingers ranging from 5 to approximately 30. The arm repeatedly strikes and breaches the containment locker containing SCP-2211-4, approximately 5 meters from containment locker DAD-2838. It subsequently reaches for SCP-2211-4 and pulls it back into containment locker DAD-2838. No further activity detected. Arm presumed to have dematerialized. Following this incident, the containment locker was examined, but no traces of the many-fingered arm were found inside. Further examination of the locker's contents revealed that SCP-2211-1, 2, and 3 had vanished from their storage media. The files were gone. SCP-2211-4, when tested, no longer displayed any anomalous properties. It was just an ordinary coffee heater, though no staff wanted to use it to heat their coffee, no matter how many times it was washed. Head researcher Min declared SCP-2211 uncontained on August 10, 2014. But there was one more unusual finding. The USB drive that once contained SCP-2211-1 was not empty. There was an untitled text file on the drive. When opened, it simply read, "Got my nose," followed by an unusual text emoticon, ::00, end parentheses, end parentheses. As a man of science, one who has devoted my life to exploring the unexplained and seeking answers to questions that most are afraid to even ask, nothing troubles me quite like a mystery left unsolved. But the tales of these Chinese Hewlett-Packard offices are composed almost entirely of disturbing mysteries, of frayed wires and broken printers, of survivors that cannot tell their stories, and messages we will never get to read. What happened after that Hangzhou branch closed? Was it connected to the findings at the Shanghai branch? Did that mysterious arm grab hold of the Hangzhou team, contorting their bodies into unrecognizable shapes and forcing them to meld with the products they once sold? Or was it once an employee too, broken down into spare parts and trapped as files and desktop beverage warmers? I can't be certain. But I do know this. I'm throwing out my printer. I think I'll just write my notes by hand from now on. I won't necessarily suggest you do the same, but do be careful while handling the machinery. Treat it with respect. After all, you never know if that printer was once as human as you or me.
A young man and his girlfriend enter the apartment they share. She tosses her keys on the entryway table as the man checks the time on his phone. He reminds the young woman that they will need to leave soon if they don't want to miss the movie they have purchased tickets for. The woman agrees, but she wants to take a quick shower before they leave. As she goes to freshen up, the man sits down at his computer to get in a quick round or two of his favorite online squad-based first-person shooter. He puts on his headset and jumps into a game. Before he knows it, he's just finished his third round. He checks the time on his phone again and realizes that they were running late. He takes off his headphones and is confused when he hears what sounds like the shower still running. He gets up and goes to the bathroom door and listens. The shower is definitely still on. The man knocks on the door and asks if everything is all right. He waits a moment, but there's no response. He knocks again, and still nothing. She doesn't usually take showers this long, and he immediately worries that she might have passed out or, well, he doesn't even want to think about it. "I'm coming in, okay?" he announces as he opens the door to check on her. The man immediately notices how steamy the room is. The hot water must have been running for a while, and he's worried she really did pass out from the heat. "What's going on? Are you okay?" he asks, and when there's no response again, he pulls open the shower curtain to find nothing. Just an empty tub. There's no sign of his girlfriend anywhere. The man is beyond confused. He turns off the water and goes to the bedroom, but she isn't in there either. He runs to the front door, but it's still locked, and her keys are sitting on the table. He unlocks the door and sticks his head out into the hallway anyway, but nothing is out there. What is going on? He checks the bedroom again, then the bathroom, but she hasn't suddenly reappeared in either. He's in complete shock, unsure of what could be happening. He sits down on the toilet and puts his head in his hands. His head is spinning as it feels like the world is suddenly falling down all around him. The police are immediately suspicious of the man's story. His girlfriend simply vanished while taking a shower? "You expect us to believe that?" the detective asks. The man has no answer, though. It's as if she simply blinked out of existence. He's convinced she must still be in the building somewhere, that she somehow slipped out without him noticing. But none of the security footage from inside the building shows anything abnormal. There's footage from the cameras in the lobby of them entering the building, but nothing after that of her leaving. Just as in every missing person case like this, the boyfriend is the #1 suspect. But without any evidence, they can't hold him any longer. After many long hours of interviews, they finally allow him to leave, but not back to the apartment, since it's an active crime scene. The man has no family to speak of, and his few friends seem to have the same suspicions as the police and want nothing to do with him. His girlfriend was the only person he truly had in the world, and now she's gone. He's put up in a shabby motel, and days pass, then weeks, then months, but no evidence of the missing woman ever turns up. The man replays the memory of that day over and over in his head, searching for some kind of answer, but try as he might, he can't remember anything helpful. No clue as to what could have happened. The case is completely cold, and has been from the very start. The police eventually have to move on to newer, more solvable cases, and they finally allow the man to return home. He's overwhelmed with emotion the first time he enters the apartment. The place is a mess. It looks like the police turned it inside out looking for clues. Not knowing what else to do, he starts the long process of cleaning up the apartment. After hours of putting things away, he eventually gathers the strength to go to the one room he's been avoiding, the bathroom. He opens the door to the last place he's certain his girlfriend was. He enters to find that it looks like the rest of the apartment, as if someone has looked at every single object. But just like him, the police never found any trace of where she went. After straightening up this last room, he decides that he should take a shower and go to bed. It fills him with dread to think about standing in the last place he knows where she was. But he's had months to grieve the loss of his girlfriend, and he's decided that he needs to move on, whatever that means when someone goes missing without a trace. He turns on the shower and lets the water heat up before stepping in. Once he's in, every thought he has is about her. He wonders if she ever actually got in the shower at all, or somehow used it as a diversion to slip out unseen. He just can't figure out how. The day's events race through his mind, just as they have 1,000 times before, but his thoughts are interrupted when he notices that the water has started to pool around his feet. He looks down and sees that the drain cover looks normal. Maybe there's a clog, though. Do showers clog when they're not used? He has no idea. He bends down to get a closer look. The long, black creature emerges from the drain in the blink of an eye and latches onto his mouth, muffling him before he even has a chance to scream. He struggles and pulls down the curtain on top of him as he falls back onto the shower floor. But it's already too late. And in a matter of minutes, he too will be gone without a trace. Is there anything more comforting after a hard day than a nice, long, hot shower? The answer to that is no, there is nothing better. But that relaxing shower might just be the last you ever take, when unbeknownst to you, your pipes are home to an instance of SCP-153, also known as drain worms. SCP-153 refers to a species that resembles the common nematode, or roundworm, consisting of a long, thin body with a large mouth on one end. While some roundworms can grow to as large as a meter long, which is in itself a disturbing thought, SCP-153 instances can be much, much larger, and it is estimated that they can reach up to nearly 10 meters in length, though it is hypothesized that some instances in the wild may grow even longer. These worm-like creatures will feed off of any available organic material. However, their favorite form of sustenance is fresh animal tissue, and they appear to have an especially strong predilection towards human flesh. In order to satiate their desire to feed on their preferred prey, SCP-153 has developed a rather unique predatory style that perfectly suits its elongated body structure. While it is unknown just where they originate, they are most often found in the pipes of sewer and drainage systems. 153 instances will swim up those pipes, seeking out ones that lead to people's homes, and especially those that connect to showers and bathtubs. Once they reach the end of the pipe, SCP-153 will latch onto the drain cover and begin secreting an acidic substance. The acid quickly dissolves the drain cover, and SCP-153 will position its own mouth in its place, which it then is able to camouflage as the missing drain cover almost perfectly. Once SCP-153 has taken this position, it is virtually impossible to distinguish it from the original or discern that anything has changed. SCP-153 will then lie in wait until it detects that someone has entered the shower or bathtub. Once the unsuspecting person has begun to bathe, it will very quickly emerge from the drain, latching onto the victim's face, most likely in order to prevent them from calling for help. It then begins to rapidly secrete more of the same acid that it used to dissolve the drain cover. With how effectively it was able to dissolve metal, it's no surprise that SCP-153 is able to quickly produce the same effect on its victim. Their skin, muscle, and bone will all be almost immediately liquefied, allowing SCP-153 to feed on the slurry, and the drain worms feed extremely quickly as well. After just several minutes, basically nothing will remain of the person who stepped into the shower, and 153 will retreat back into the drain, leaving no signs that it was ever there, save for the missing drain cover. The SCP Foundation became aware of this anomaly following multiple mysterious missing person cases that all had one key element in common. Each was reported as having disappeared after entering a bathroom to either shower or take a bath. The Foundation soon discovered that large populations of SCP-153 instances were living in the sewers beneath several major American cities and immediately began enacting containment procedures. The Foundation collected as many specimens as they could and brought them to Bioresearch Area 12, where they keep them contained in 10 by 10 by 5 meter tanks that are kept partially filled with sewage and other organic material for them to feed on. Of course, it is of the utmost importance that these containers are never connected to any other plumbing systems, either internal or external. With several specimens contained, the Foundation began researching the creatures in order to hopefully better understand them and how they were able to develop such complex hunting techniques. Research was also approved to find out whether they could be used as a sort of waste disposal system in certain extreme circumstances, such as with SCP-2717, a mass of living animal tissue that has grown to line nearly 4 kilometers of sewer pipes beneath Amsterdam. A small number of SCP-153 instances were approved for release into the wild in order to test whether they could stall the spread of 2717. However, this experiment was halted following some disturbing new reports. More missing person reports came to the Foundation's attention that bore the hallmarks of an SCP-153 attack, but these new reports were not limited to people who vanished after bathing. It now appears that SCP-153 has further adapted and has begun to emerge not just from showers and bathtub drains, but now also from sinks and, yes, even toilets. The Foundation is unaware of just how many instances of SCP-153 continue to exist in the wild, but there's no doubt that many continue to live and hunt undetected in sewers around the world. This anomaly, which has been classified as Euclid, is taken very seriously by the Foundation, and any reports of people who go missing from bathrooms are immediately investigated for signs of SCP-153. Field agents are to be equipped with infrared and ultraviolet sensors which can bypass SCP-153's camouflage, and if specimens are able to be captured alive, then they are to be brought to Area 12 for further research. But don't bother worrying too much the next time you step into the tub. If you've been targeted by SCP-153, there's not much you'll be able to do anyway, and your worries will soon be going down the drain, along with whatever remains of you.
The store manager had heard of crazy customers, but this was something else. A mob comes barreling towards the store, visible through the display windows as they charge down the street. They all look crazed, much closer in appearance to rabid animals than human beings, frenzying, foaming at the mouth. A few of them stumble in their haste while rushing for the automatic sliding doors. Some fall to the ground, only for others to clamber over them, leaping like athletes going over hurdles, with all the same speed, but with none of the grace. To the staff inside the store, they look like a pack of zombies, all apparently infected by the same virus that had given them such a ravenous hunger. For savings! "I thought Black Friday was a week ago," the trainee remarks as the doors slide open and the first of the mob spills inside. "Welcome to the Mattress Madness Megastore, everyone. If you could kindly form an orderly..." Within seconds, the trainee vanishes as a tidal wave of maddened mattress store customers starts to pile into the store. Each and every one of them is deranged. That much is clear, even from a distance. Across the store manager watches as his colleagues are shoved and tackled out of the way, just from their misfortune of standing too close to the entrance. It's only as one of the mob wanders closer that the store manager notices their eyes. Both lids stay shut, somehow closed, despite the crazed customer standing upright. They aren't screwed tightly. It's clear this person isn't forcefully keeping their eyelids clamped down. Instead, they're gently sealed as if the customer is still asleep, or sleepwalking. The whole situation was astounding. First thing in the morning, just at opening time, a horde of sleepwalking customers barged their way into the Mattress Madness Megastore, moving and fighting retail staff as if they were all still awake and fully aware. And as if that isn't bizarre enough, it quickly turns out these people aren't here because they're eager not to miss out on great deals on their bedroom furniture. To the store manager's horror, the mob has come to the Mattress Madness Megastore for breakfast. He watches an elderly woman, eyes closed, shuffle up to a luxury cashmere pillow-top California king-size mattress and proceed to eat it. And not bite by bite either, not even ripping off pieces to chomp through like so much cotton candy. In a far more horrifying fashion, the old lady eats the mattress whole. The store manager feels his blood run cold at the sight of her mouth widening unnaturally, unhinging like a snake eating its prey. Except in this bizarre unaired nature documentary, the snake is a human being, and its meal is a perfectly good bed that moments before had been resting on a stylish ottoman frame. The same exact display of confusing carnage is unfolding all over the Mattress Madness Megastore, people devouring entire Egyptian cotton mattresses. Some had even already devoured their respective meals and were already moving on to any accompanying pillows or cushions, feeding on them in much the same way. The few members of staff bold enough to try and intervene couldn't seem to wake the sleepwalking shoppers up, no matter how hard they gripped each one by the shoulders and shake. Nothing could deter them from devouring divans and munching on memory foam. A sudden, terrifying, and inescapable thought cuts through all the confusion, striking the store manager with an even greater fear. The stock room. Behind a series of doors, marked with signs reading "Employees Only," are shelves upon shelves of new units. The Mattress Madness Megastore being a much bigger outlet means that there's additional inventory to replace any mattresses on the shop floor that gets sold. And more mattresses mean more food for the mob. The worry that these sleepwalkers might soon develop a taste for human flesh never occurs to the store manager. He hurriedly races around the store, gathering up as many of his surviving staff as he can, and urges them to help him defend the stock in the back room. Some are already abandoning their posts, ripping name tags off their polo shirt uniforms and rushing to leave the store. They aren't willing to die for $7.25 an hour. The Mattress Madness Megastore has insurance. It'll cover the damaged stock once the crazed customers have feasted on feather beds, but the manager urges them to stay. The store's insurance covers stock that is damaged in transit, not mattresses that are eaten by hungry lunatics. A few stay, using the manager's desperation to leverage pay raises and more annual vacation days in exchange for their help during this crisis of cashmere carnivory. With his resistance force gathered, the store manager commands the remaining employees to charge for the door at the back of the store, but some of the nearby mattress eaters overhear in their sleepwalking state. The staff freeze, uncertain whether to bolt for the stockroom and risk being chased by the hungry customers. They need a distraction, a sacrificial lamb to grab the horde's attention. And with a solemn expression, the store manager realizes what he must do. This isn't a fight he'll make it out of alive. He leaps up onto a twin inner spring and calls out to the crazed customers. "Attention, everyone," he bellows. "I'd like to announce that all our mattresses are half off for the next 5 minutes." The crowd goes even more rabid, all eager to eat the pillowy pedestal the store manager is standing upon. His staff flees in the opposite direction, rushing to barricade themselves inside the storeroom, while their boss meets a grisly demise, and the crazed customers devour every remaining mattress in sight. But what on earth could have possibly caused such a scene to unfold? What was the inciting incident for this unprecedented act of mass matricide, the divan destruction, and combination carnage? All it took was one seemingly innocuous image, an unassuming online post, to stir over 7,000 people into a featherbed feeding frenzy. It's December the 3rd, 2020, almost an entire day before the deranged events that would soon unfold at the Mattress Madness megastore. And just like he does most days after college, the student is trawling various internet forums in search of things to laugh at. He's procrastinating, and through inaction, allowing himself to be buried under a veritable avalanche of assignments, all with rapidly approaching dates that they're due in by. But he doesn't care. He can always do them tomorrow. As far as he's concerned, there's plenty of time for him to waste doing, well, very little. But no matter where he looks, nothing brings with it even the smallest hit of dopamine. It's been hours since he stopped checking the clock at the bottom right-hand corner of his computer screen, instead wearing out the muscles of his finger as it spins the scrolling wheel of his mouse. His social media feed is all the same, more doom and gloom, and despite his searching, he can't find anything funny to alleviate his ongoing existential nightmare for so much as a second. If anything, seeing every anxiety-inducing post about the state of the world, or dour headlines of reposted news articles, only makes everything worse. That is, until the fateful link appears in his inbox. It's from one of his friends at college, living in the dorm across campus. The pair of them constantly swapped links and exchanged memes over direct messages, sometimes while sitting in the middle of important lectures. So the student quickly opens up the latest message from his friend, pleased to have something to relieve the monotony instilled by the prior several hours' worth of mindless scrolling. Sure enough, his friend's message sits waiting to be read in his inbox. It's just a single blue hyperlink with no additional context offered. Nothing to indicate what the link is or what website it leads to, or even why the student's friend bothered to send it. They're long past the need to provide context for the memes they send each other. The link redirects to a familiar corner of the internet to the student, the deep-fried memes subreddit. Just seeing that written in the hyperlink is enough to spur an enthusiastic click. It's like going home, back to somewhere warm and welcoming, where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came, and where the student knows he's bound to find something to entertain himself. A deep-fried meme is usually a heavily edited image with a number of different filters added to it. Its contrast is boosted, the picture is oversaturated and distorted, all to the point wherein the colors are unnatural, and the image appears as a grainy, washed-out mess of pixels. And they're one of the student's favorite subgenre of funny posts. Opening up the link sent by his friend, he finds one such deep-fried meme staring back at him. It depicts a man, long-haired and wearing dark clothes, presumably a fan of heavy metal music. In front of the metalhead is a table with a chessboard placed neatly atop it. The pieces on the board are distributed in such a way that places the metalhead in checkmate, and his opponent? Directly opposite him at the table is a glass bowl filled with water and a goldfish aimlessly swimming around. And to top off this Louvre-worthy masterpiece is text, seemingly cut and paste from various different places, judging by the alternating fonts and styles. The words have been placed into a sentence that reads, "Tell me your secrets, fish." And the student explodes with laughter. As if answering his prayers for some humorous entertainment to avoid working on his college assignments, his friend had appeared out of the blue and delivered a perfect deep-fried meme. But that momentary boost in serotonin levels quickly subsides, and the student knows how these exchanges work. This has to be reciprocal, a mutual trading of memes, like for like, akin to swapping trading cards in the playground at a younger age. And so he searches the subreddit for a token worthy of returning to his friend. He clicks on a search filter, sorting the results from the top posts of all time to the most recent posts of the day. These were fresh, hot off the presses, or out of the deep fryer in this case. And the newer they were, the lower the chances that his friend had already seen them. Scrolling through, the student is met with a few underwhelming attempts that weren't worthy of the prestige expected by the deep-fried meme subreddit, they'd be better suited for posting on r/cringe. But then, it appears. The perfect, deep-fried, crispy golden brown, cooked to perfection picture to send back to his friend. The distorted image is a photograph of a bed, specifically a king-size mattress, on what looks like a polished wooden bed frame, although it's not easy to tell thanks to just how grainy the picture has been made. Whoever edited this meme knew what they were doing, and has nailed the absurdist, bizarre humor that the student and his friend thrive on. A label over the mattress simply reads, "King size," and the meme is captioned in a classic top text, bottom text format with the phrase, "A feast fit for a king." And the pièce de résistance, the crowning touch that makes this meme worthy of the student's lofty standards, is the title given to it by the original poster. It sums up the meme perfectly, succinctly in 3 words: "Eat your mattress." The student erupts into uncontrollable fits of laughter, so much so that tears start to stream down his face. His stomach almost feels like it might explode at just how fine he thinks the post he's found is. Through giggles that hit like the aftershock of an earthquake, he copies the link to the Eat Your Mattress meme into a message and hits send to share the hilarity with his friend. Little does he know, he's just condemned his friend to the same fate that now awaits him. As soon as he falls asleep, it'll happen. And the student and his friend aren't the only ones either. The post spreads, either sent directly from one person to another or seen by those just browsing the deep-fried meme subreddit and happening across the Eat Your Mattress photo. Not all of them find it funny. They don't have to. They aren't even required to share it, to pass it on to someone else and help the post spread like wildfire. They've looked at it, and that's enough. Come the next day, an estimated 7,000 people across the world have seen the same meme, and it affects them all in the exact same way, becoming a directive, a command planted in their subconscious, one that they will act on without even realizing. It's been only a few hours since all the carnage erupted at the Mattress Madness megastore, but by now, the SCP Foundation has swept in and taken control of the scene. A cordoned section of multiple blocks, under the cover story of a dangerous gas leak. It's enough to keep civilians and prying eyes away without asking too many questions. But as for the Foundation personnel themselves, they've got plenty of unanswered questions of their own. 2 members of the cleanup team are reviewing the store's security footage, baffled by the sights of the chaos that unfolded there earlier that same morning. On the screen, frenzied customers are eating entire mattresses, stretching their mouths wide open and swallowing them whole. They watch as the store manager appears to make an attempt at a noble sacrifice to distract the horde of ravenous customers so his employees can rush towards the storeroom. But the manager is fine. Once the horde has eaten all the mattresses out on the store's main floor, they start trying to break into the stockroom out back, where the other employees have used layers upon layers of cellophane-wrapped mattresses to barricade the door. By the time the Foundation arrives, the customers have already forced their way into the stockroom and have devoured around half of the mattresses, while exhausted employees try to wake them from their sleepwalking state. The Foundation sees to it that everyone affected is rapidly administered with memory-wiping amnestics to forget all about the ordeal. Their next job is to try and track down the source of whatever caused this unprecedented outbreak of mattress eating. But being experts in all things anomalous, it doesn't take the Foundation long to start pursuing possible explanations. Having already confirmed this wasn't a viral anomaly, their next course of action is to investigate possible mimetic causes, and sure enough, a common factor quickly presents itself. The mob that attacked the Mattress Madness megastore, along with subjects who have engaged in similar acts of mattress eating across the world, all have one thing in common. Each one has been exposed to the Eat Your Mattress post on the Deep Fried Memes subreddit. It takes some deduction on the Foundation's part to figure out the cause. After all, the meme in question is similar to a number of others posted in the same subreddit. As a result, the Foundation's online detection software, or web crawlers, initially fail to flag the mattress meme as an anomalous image. Once they do, it is designated as SCP-5126. But with a cause established, the pieces start to fit together. The Foundation's researchers soon realize what the image does. Another reason it was initially missed is that its effects only occur once the subject that has seen it falls asleep. The student is one such subject who lived through this. He dozes off in his gaming chair well past the middle of the night, hours after he's first seen SCP-5126. While sound asleep, without waking up once, he starts to seek out his mattress, laying unoccupied on his bed on the other side of his cramped dorm room. He and all the others who have seen SCP-5126 then consume their mattresses, including in many cases their pillows, any cushions, and even plush toys. Their bodies stretch unnaturally to accommodate the meal, only to return to normal once they have done the deed. Having returned to normal, the student and the others like him remain unaware they've just eaten a mattress. But the Foundation is left puzzled. There's still one question that hasn't been answered. Their examination of the several hundred customers at the Mattress Madness megastore revealed that the consumed mattresses aren't digested like food ordinarily is. They vanish without a trace. So this naturally begs the question, where are all these eaten mattresses going? Well, the Foundation quickly comes up with an experiment to find out. They place tracking devices inside of the cell of a member of D-Class personnel and expose him to SCP-5126. Sure enough, the meme takes effect, and once asleep, he eats his mattress. The experiment is going exactly as the Foundation planned. Now they can follow the signal from the tracking devices to pinpoint the destination that all the consumed mattresses are disappearing to. And after several sweeps of the Earth's surface, their satellites discover a ping coming from a remote location in the state of Montana. MTF Sigma-16 suit up, ready to head out to the location. This mobile task force operates under the codename Slumber Party, and it's up to them to investigate. They come across a large structure. It looks a lot like a medieval castle, but it has been built out of mattresses and large cushions. It's the ultimate pillow fort. It even has pillars and all the fortifications you'd expect from a real historical castle, all made out of even more pillows. The Slumber Party team enters the fort and quickly discovers that the structure is able to anomalously reconstruct itself. Sigma-3 kicks over a stack of pillows and plush toys arranged to resemble a statue and watches as it reforms after collapsing. The team ventures deeper into the pillow fort and is quickly met with humanoid entities that are also made out of pillows. An entity swipes a pillow arm at Sigma-1, but she ducks out of the path of the attack. Drawing her firearm, she fires, causing a plume of feathers to spray out of the pillow person. The entity is unfazed, and several additional shots do nothing. Even a taser is ineffective. The pillow entities are exhibiting extreme resistance to damage, but Sigma-2 has an idea. She grabs a pillow from one of the walls and uses it to bash the entity attacking her teammate Sigma-1. The pillow person collapses into a pile on the floor, inanimate, and just like that, the mobile task force has a way to fight back. They all grab pillows and make quick work of their attackers before they move on to explore the rest of the castle. Then they encounter the king. There is a man sitting atop a large stack of cushions, wearing a nightcap and pajamas, eating feathers from an expensive brand of pillow. Scattered around him are empty pillowcases. Trying to ignore the smell, the Slumber Party team attempts to interrogate him. He claims to be the king of cushion, obsessed with pillows since a young age. Their smell, taste, and texture inspire him to create a kingdom of plush, his masterpiece of mattresses. It doesn't take very long for the Foundation operatives to realize that this man is insane. They question him about how SCP-5126, the Eat Your Mattress meme, works. How is it able to make people consume entire mattresses and send them to the king's cushiony castle? And why? Well, the king explains that buying mattresses is expensive, so in order to build his castle, he's outsourced the gathering of building materials. As he sees it, he is offering people affected by the meme a delicious meal in exchange for their beds, spreading the world of pillows so he can gather resources for his kingdom. Suddenly, he challenges the Slumber Party team to a pillow fight for having tracked him down. The king of cushion takes up a pillow in one hand and charges towards the mobile task force, armed and ready to do battle with them all. He is quickly incapacitated by Sigma-1's taser and drops to the floor defeated. Now designated SCP-5126-A, the King of Cushion is transported back to the SCP Foundation for analysis and containment. Their testing reveals he possesses no anomalous properties whatsoever, and the king actually requires his stomach to be pumped thanks to the copious amounts of pillow feathers he's been eating. The Foundation gets to work dismantling his pillow fort and moving all the components into storage. And as for the Eat Your Mattress meme itself, the Foundation's web crawlers are keeping an eye out for any other posts of the anomalous image. And don't worry, if you find yourself giggling at a funny deep-fried image that jokingly implies you should eat your mattress, the Foundation will ensure you don't remember it happening, and they'll even throw in a replacement for your swallowed mattress at no added cost. Now that's a bargain. A construction worker puts the final nail into the wall of the room he's working on. He stands up and admires his work. This is going to be a beautiful hotel one day, a true triumph for not just him, but the entire country. And he's proud that he got to play a small part in its construction. He starts to pack up his tools. There's plenty more rooms that need work. It's a massive structure that will ultimately hold thousands. What a modern marvel. As he finishes putting away his tools, he notices something. Through the still doorless frame, he sees someone walk by in the hallway. Normally, he wouldn't think anything of it. There's plenty of other people working on this floor of the hotel, but there's something about this woman. Could it be? No, it's not possible. He takes out his wallet and opens it. Inside is a faded photograph of the construction worker when he was still a young man, barely more than a boy, really. Standing next to him in the picture is the most beautiful woman he had ever known. She was his first true friend, his best friend, and he always hoped that maybe it would turn into something more. They grew up together, shared so many experiences, but then ultimately they were separated and lost touch. He was never able to find her again, but as the picture in his wallet shows, he never stopped thinking about her. Could it really be her, though? He runs into the hallway and calls out. The woman stops at the end of the hallway and turns around. She's carrying a tall stack of boxes that are blocking her face. She sets them down and he sees that it really is her. They run towards each other, laughing like children, like the way they used to, and embrace in the middle of the hall. He can't believe it. It's been so many years. He never thought he would see her again. How long has it been? Too long, she tells him. He can't believe how little she's changed. The years have hardly taken any toll on her. She's just as lovely and beautiful as that last day he saw her. He asks her where she's been, what she's been doing. Is she married? She tells him no, and that after they lost touch, she feels like she has just been looking for him, waiting for the day she would randomly see him pass by on the street so that they could reconnect. She just never thought it would happen that they'd be working in the same place at the same time. The construction worker can't believe it either. They both start to ask each other something at the same time, but then stop and laugh at speaking over each other. You go first, he tells her. No, you, she responds with a laugh. Just then, they're both interrupted by the sound of a whistle. The work is finished for the day. That's the signal to pack up and go home. The construction worker tells her to wait there. He just has to go grab his tools and then the two of them can go down together. But as he turns to leave, she reaches out and grabs his hand. Wait, she tells him. He stops and turns back to her. It's okay, he tells her. I'll be right back. But she doesn't seem to want to let go of his hand. Please, not yet, she tells him. I just want you to stay with me. He looks down at his hand. She's gripping him so tight that it starts to hurt a little. Really, I'll just be a second, he tells her. Then we can go somewhere and catch up. But still, she won't let go of his hand. I need you, she tells him. She steps close to him, pressing her body against his. She closes her eyes and opens her mouth, and he feels himself doing the same. I've always needed you, she says as their mouths are about to meet. I need you forever. The construction worker screams as the tiny tendrils emerge from the woman's body and plunge into his flesh. He opens his eyes to see the girl he once knew morphing into a writhing mass of fibers, each reaching out towards him. A long tentacle-like appendage wraps itself around his legs before whipping up and around his body, constraining him, as a second tentacle wraps around his head, stifling his screams, before popping his head off of his body. North Korea. It's a country that's shrouded in mystery, whose government, culture, and day-to-day life is a black box to many foreigners. But there's another secret inside, one that even the SCP Foundation is desperate to get to the bottom of, one that they know as SCP-031. SCP-031 is a massive organism, estimated to weigh more than 7,500 kilograms, that can currently be found in a very surprising location, the Ryugyong Hotel, which is located in Pyongyang, the capital of Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The giant creature lives within the ductwork and maintenance infrastructure of the building, where it has spread to all 105 floors of the hotel. Each of its many tendrils ends in a pod-like growth called a sporocarp, which are approximately 2 meters in length and covered in many cilia-like structures. Subjects have reported that when in the presence of these sporocarp, they don't see them as the writhing mass of organic matter that they really are, but rather as an individual from their past, often with one whom they shared an intense emotional attachment. When taking this form, the sporocarp will try to convince the subject to remain with them for an extended period of time. The sporocarp will then attempt to make physical contact with the subject, and if successful, its cilia-like structures will begin injecting digestive juices directly into the subject.
This will lead to the start of a process that will eventually cause their flesh to be broken down, consumed, and then incorporated into SCP-031's body mass. Unfortunately for the victim, this horrific process does not kill them. At the same time they are being digested, a flagellum, which is a tentacle-like appendage, will emerge from the sporocarp and wrap around the subject's head. This flagellum has its own set of tiny tendrils that penetrate the cranial cavity and replace the victim's brain's blood vessels, which has the effect of keeping the brain alive and functioning. The head is then removed from the body, and the brain is transported to the central mass of the SCP-031 organism, where it too is incorporated into the creature. It is estimated by Foundation researchers that SCP-031's mass contains thousands of such brains, and by all appearances, they are still alive and conscious. The Foundation first became aware of SCP-031 in 1948, following reports of police activity in North Korea at a location where multiple citizens had gathered near a refugee camp. Those gathered were proclaiming their love for a cult-like leader they referred to as the Beloved. The civilians were able to be calmed through the use of gas-based tranquilizers and amnestics by Mobile Task Force Psi-7, who then recovered a mass that would later be known as SCP-031 and secured it at a local containment site. The SCP-031 creature only weighed 75 kilograms at this time and still had a vaguely human shape. It did not seem to be able to incorporate other matter into its form at this point either, nor could it take on other people's forms, with its only anomalous effect seeming to be its ability to inspire intense feelings of love and devotion. The breakout of the Korean War in 1950 led to the destruction of the Foundation containment site, and all anomalies housed there escaped. Following the end of the war in 1953, all of the escaped anomalies were accounted for, all except SCP-031, which was presumed dead. Little more thought was given to the terminated anomaly until 1992, when the SCP Foundation caught wind of reports describing numerous fatalities involving workers at the Ryugyong Hotel. A mobile task force was sent to the hotel to investigate further, but after none of the members returned from the mission, the hotel was locked down and all construction was halted until further notice. By 2008, the increased infestation of the still windowless hotel led to local officials starting construction again to finish the building's exterior and hopefully hide the presence of SCP-031 within, which led to the deaths of even more workers. It's estimated that at its peak infestation, more than 75% of the hotel's 3,000 rooms were infested by SCP-031, but reclamation efforts have been able to reduce that number substantially. Flame-projecting equipment is able to destroy SCP-031 tendrils and sporocarps, as well as any personnel who have become assimilated into SCP-031. Reclamation efforts are ongoing, and local officials continue to work with the SCP Foundation to facilitate the ultimate containment or neutralization of the entity. But there's one more strange twist to this story. The more astute SCP experts may have noticed the similarities to SCP-1427, a large slab of beryllium bronze with mind-altering effects that is also located within the Ryugyong Hotel. How is it that two anomalies, both of which strongly impact the human brain, are both somehow housed at the same location? Some clues exist in the form of a classified communication chain between two senior members of Foundation staff. The two discuss the obvious discrepancies that exist when there are records of two anomalies both existing at the same place at the same time, with neither file referencing the other. It leads to a strange paradox where, for one to exist, the other isn't able to, and yet they both do exist. Teams sent to investigate SCP-1427 will find SCP-1427, and teams sent to investigate SCP-031 will find SCP-031. And yet the first team will have no memory of seeing SCP-031, and vice versa. When the teams were sent at the same time, they were unable to find each other, as if they were existing in parallel dimensions, each with its own version of the Ryugyong Hotel housing its own version of an SCP-classified anomaly. Do both anomalies exist? Or perhaps neither of them do? Are both SCPs in fact the result of a third, as yet unknown anomaly? The answer to that question remains unknown, at least to the two senior members of the staff who were communicating about the contradictory files. Both were relieved of their duties under, well, suspicious circumstances, and for the time being, both files continue to exist in the database, just as both anomalies seem to exist in the Ryugyong Hotel. For now, this Euclid-class anomaly continues to be contained as well as it can be within the ducts and maintenance shafts of the hotel's central spire. The three secondary spires each contain a Type 9 Heaven's Blade restriction system that focuses a disruptive energy field towards the central spire. This system prevents SCP-031's psychic energies from escaping the structure and affecting any off-site personnel, as North Korean teams continue to push back against the spreading tendrils in the hopes that one day they will finally be able to open the hotel. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-024, the Game Show of Death, for another anomalous location that is both strange and very, very dangerous. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.